I would like to open the meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board of Education for October 25th, 2016. Mr. Matsuoka, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Will you please stand? Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a esta junta. Tenemos los aparatos disponibles para la interpretación. Creo que la mayoría de ustedes ya los tienen. Si no los tienen, nos pueden ver ahí por las puertas dobles. Una vez más, bienvenidos.
We also have headsets for the hearing impaired. If you need some, please indicate if you need a headset. We will move to item number 5, Superintendent's Report.
I have two items that I would like to speak to. Did you report out closed session?
No, 7, yeah.
Oh, we'll have to change that.
Yeah. Do you want to do that
Let's
one?
do that first,
Okay.
and then we'll do my comments.
We're going to actually change a little bit in the agenda. We're going to announce closed session action, and I just want to announce that in closed session, the board took action to appoint an interim principal for McKinley School. As some of you know, Emilio Handel left in McKinley School, and he got appointed to the Vista Del Mar Unified or School District. Mr. Matsuoka.
So now my comments will make more sense in this order. So I'm pleased to announce the interim principal for McKinley is Rachel Gonzalez Harris, and she's in the audience. And I bet there's some teachers here from McKinley who are wondering who their leader is going to be for the rest of this year. And Rachel currently teaches at Adams. She's sitting right next to her principal, who's smiling but probably a little sad. And Rachel's been in our district for, 20 years. She's taught. She actually was an interim principal at Roosevelt and was an assistant principal at 2 of our junior highs. And I wanted to go back to the classroom. She's had a great time at Adams. And when I spoke with Amy, she said Rachel's been a fantastic instructional leader at Adams. And so this appointment is going to be for the rest of the year, and I would invite Rachel to come up and just say hi to the board and introduce yourself to your district. So welcome, Rachel.
Hello, thank you. Wow, there's a big crowd tonight and lots of people that I know. I just want to, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. I'm very excited. As Carrie said, I have been in the district for a good 20 years. And in that time, I feel like I've worked under some amazing principals. I've worked under some amazing people and colleagues, some of them that are sitting up on the bench right now. I'm so grateful and I'm thankful that I have this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to meeting the families, the amazing teachers that I know that are there, and of course the students. So I'm looking forward to a great year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Ms.
Rachel.
Parker.
I would just, as a side note that that was on B4, right? Item B4.
Yes,
Because we didn't,
that was
as we
it.
were part of the vote.
Yes.
I think most of us up here, this is not the first time that we've seen you, and for some of us, it's been a really, really long time. But I want to say thank you on behalf of the board because, McKinley is hugely important to the district, the students there, their success and continuity, and it's really important that we have somebody with experience step in. And so thank you for being willing to do that. And I am sorry for Adams. I'm sorry for Dr. Alzina. And I'm sorry for the students in your classroom. I know you will have some upset parents.
I know.
I hope you will stay connected to those students too.
I will, and there will be tears tomorrow, I know, not just mine. But I do appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to it, I really am. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
My other other comment, last week I had the opportunity to attend the Institute for Equity in Education, known as IEE, and it was held by Just Communities. And when I landed in this job, I kept hearing about IEE, and I heard Just Communities work, and then I've heard about how many people went through it. So I think they sent me the dates for October very quickly, and I put it on my calendar, and it survived all the busyness. It was a profound experience. I mean, I've been to hundreds of conferences, workshops. I've been to a lot, and it's not a training. It causes you to look at the world differently. And I now understand your questions that you asked during the interview about what is cultural proficiency. It's really deep, complex work, but it's already changed some of my conversations in the last 2 days. So I was really grateful for that. I get 25 other Santa Barbara colleagues that we just got to be, I don't know, educators and friends. It was really a transformative week. So glad that I got to go. I will be encouraging as many people as we can to go to that. It just changes your view of the work. So just wanted to share that. I thought Jared Schwartz's design of that week it's amazing. So, and I know there were questions about the work of Just Communities. I will say this just qualitatively, their work is so important for Santa Barbara Unified. And we'll back it up someday with some data and some results, but I just wanted to share my personal experience. It's fantastic. Okay.
Thank you. We move to item number 6, board comments, correspondence. Mr. Hare.
I'll go through some. This is the one part of the job I'm going to miss, is being able to go to so many things and be able to report on them. But the Wellness Committee, which I've been on for many years, as I've said before, is one of the best groups I listen to, and what they're doing at every school regarding wellness and food and getting the kids aware of good and bad food and good and bad health. I've truly enjoyed that committee. I went to San Marcos, again, a Just Communities event called Talking in Class, where about 25 students get together for 3 weeks talking about barriers and ways to overcome differences between people of color and white. And then they meet and discuss with the entire faculty in a morning session talking about these things. And it's extremely moving. And the one thing I came away this time with was the question was asked, what's stopping people from color from participating in clubs and activities on campus? And the comment that came back loud and clear, which is something we've talked about in the past, purely cost. Even though I was able to say cost should not be a factor. Our district policy is very clear that every child has a right to be in any of these programs, regardless of cost. But it equally came back, that's fine to say that, put it in writing, but to live it is totally different. My parents can't afford it. I don't want to be looked upon as somebody who's getting something for free. And then I just point out in today's agenda, there's a topic about donations. And it's amazing when you look at it, where costs for different programs are anywhere from $20 to $300. Library, volleyball, tennis, golf, water polo, science, surf, cross country, band, soccer, football, all have a cost attached to them. Anywhere, they say, from $20 to $300. And yeah, 20 is not much, or 10 is not much, but 300. It's something that the district needs to look at, is that these programs that we have at different campuses cost money. And it's right to acknowledge the fact that maybe some people just don't want to be looked upon as not having to pay for something, or not being able to pay for something is better, I should say. And so I think that was a great point that I got from that group. The Santa Barbara Foundation had a great reception for our new superintendent, and it was just a very lovely evening of a lot of people who came to say hi to Carrie or Mr. Matsuoka. And it was nice that Mr. Ebenstein volunteered his house for it. and it was well received. I went to McKinley for a Latinos Dads Forum. Debbie Badger, AOK program leader, and Sal was the moderator of it, did a fantastic job. And again, I came away with something that I've always believed in, and I've taught my children, and it was the speaker saying, here's a father and a son, and this was for Latino fathers on how to relate to their kids and how to be involved in their lives and all of that. And he said, the father said, remember, son, where you walk and the path you take. That's going to design your life. And the son went back and said, you remember, Dad, I'm following your path. And that hit these fathers. I think it hit them very strongly that their children follow them. And it was about, I think, 20 fathers, 15 to 20 fathers. And I learned firsthand what it's like to sit in an audience and not understand what's being said and have to rely on an interpreter. You don't hear, number one, they don't interpret the screen, so you don't know what's on the screen. And you know they're not interpreting every word because there's much more talk than what you hear as an interpreter. And the interpreters did a fantastic job. But it is different sitting in an audience and not understanding every word that's been said. And so I was happy that the entire program was in Spanish because these Spanish fathers need to hear the message. I went to Adams School. They had an Ability Awareness Day, not disability, an Ability Awareness Day. And Sandy Shrove, I heard her talk to a group of K through 3 students on autism. And she really talked to the children and about how to be good friends with everybody in the school. And you could tell that they, in the questions and answers, they understood what was going on and what was being said. So that was very good. To top it off, I have to thank and congratulate Santa Barbara High School. They are the CIF champions in water polo. So that's really good, number Don, that's fantastic. But an hour and a half ago, the San Marcos water polo team beat them 10-9 in the most stirring game of the year. I have 2 grandsons on the team, so it was nice to see San Marcos beat the CIF champions in the final game of their season. Not the final game of the season, but the final CIF game with that team. These guys, they've known each other since probably grammar school, but they're on different teams. But when you see them in the pool, they are enemies. But the game's over, they're totally friends because they have known each other for so long at all the schools. It's just really nice to see that kind of group. So I'm sorry it took so long, but probably the last time I'm going to have the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Board, any other comments, correspondence? I just wanted to mention, through one of my other obligations, I found out last week that the Promise program at Santa Rosa City College, which pays a significant amount of I wouldn't say tuition, but books and other fees to attend Santa Rosa City College, and it's built on the idea that it won't cost anyone who's a local graduate of our high schools, meaning any of the high schools, any other private schools south of the mountains, sort of from Refugio to the Ventura County line, now has 743 students, and a large portion of them are our students. Large portion from Santa Barbara, San Marcos, and DP. So we should be proud that we have that program in our community, in our backyard, so to speak. And I think it's just phenomenal.
And on that note, I want to say thank you to Ms. Limon and Mr. Matsuoka because you guys were stellar in their video.
Oh, yes. and the video won.
Who did?
Yes. So it's great. We move on to, if no other comments, correspondence, we move on to number 8, public comments on non-agenda matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education. I believe we have a number of speakers.
All right, you'll have 3 minutes, and I will read 3 names and then know that you're coming up. These first ones are about the parent-school partnerships.
And I just want to be sure that we note that it's 3 minutes in your target, in your home language, and then 3
Right.
minutes for
That's-
interpretation.
All right, our first one is Eugenia Ambracia, okay, followed by Isabel Maganda, followed by Juanita
Carmen Aries. Excuse me if I mispronounced your name.
I'm coming just to introduce Eugenia. And I just want to say I'm honored and proud, say to the board, I'm honored and proud to be working with and for these Cleveland families that you see right here. And I am just thankful for the journey that you embarked on through this partnership program. And I want to thank the instructor, Eugenia, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about their journey. So
Okay, thank
thank
you.
you, board, and thank you, families.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eugenia Ambrosio, and I am here just to tell you a little bit about our parent-school partnership program. I am the facilitator and the class that we have at Cleveland. And as some of you already know, the parent-school partnership program is a leadership class for parents where they learn their rights and responsibilities in the school system. And also, at the same time, they have the opportunity to create a project to help their school. Tonight, I'm here to introduce 3 of the Cleveland parents attending the parent-school partnership class that will be speaking about their plan for their project to help Cleveland. I want to mention that Cleveland parents, they're very eager and they want to help their children, and I'm very honored to be the facilitator for that class. So Isabel, Juanita, and Jason will be the speakers tonight presenting for this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, dear school board members, Superintendent Cleveland principal and parents. I would like to thank you for the support you provide for our children in our school. My name is Isabel Maganda, and I am one of the parents that are taking the parent-school partnership class in Cleveland. I have 3 children in this district, 2 of them at Cleveland and 1 in Santa Barbara Junior High. We want to thank parents for the Cleveland PTA and our principal, Gabriel Sandoval, for bringing this class to our school. In this class, we are learning about our rights and responsibilities and to understand the school system to be better help our children. This class also offers us the opportunity to work in projects to provide our principal with recommendations to improve our school. There are many things that Cleveland needs, but we are a group will be focusing in a small project to help our children to improve reading and math. We all know that Cleveland children can benefit in their receive more support in these areas. Our project wants to support and enhance the current after-school program that Cleveland has. With that help of the principal, we hope we can organize, supervise, and find qualified volunteers for our children. Our project is to create a group that will bring more volunteers to Cleveland from UCSB and Santa Barbara City College, and other local organizations to work with the students after school in the areas of reading and math. We will also promote this after-school program with parents so more students can attend at the program to improve their reading and math skills. But our school cannot do it alone. We need your help. Please help us with our project. We will be asking for your support in the coming week. My other classmates will tell you more details about our project, but I did not want to leave this opportunity to ask you to make sure all schools do their job regarding to classify English learning before they leave elementary school. Our children are bright, and with that right support, they
30
can
seconds.
master the English language before entering junior high. I just learned that reclassification in my PSP class, and I myself was affected deeply by that fault. Reclassification system is this district in the 90s. I was never reclassified, and I was not able to attend to that university. So please help us with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the school board, superintendent, and Mr. Sandoval, and parents. My name is Juanita Colmenares, and I am a student and of a parent a school partnership class. First off, I would like to personally thank you for everything you do for my child and the rest of the children in our district. Secondly, like my classmate Isabel, I would like to talk about our plan to help increase Cleveland test scores. Currently, we know that some of the students' test scores for reading and math are low, but we think with the increase in tutoring, we could help struggling students success. We have a general idea, and we are in the progress of developing a complete plan, and would like your help to make sure our plan is strong and that it or a variant of it implemented. We hope to start carrying out our plan sometimes in the first quarter of 2017. Once it's in place, we will help recruit, organize, and supervise part of a after-school tutoring. On a related note, we would like to extend an invitation to everyone to come and present to our PSP class. Your presentation will be very helpful, and it could give us some insight regarding your ideas for the project, how the district distribute money, and why some school seems to have have programs that Cleveland does not. We just want to make sure that our children get the same opportunity that everyone else gets. Jason, my classmate, and next speaker will explain the second part of our plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Jason Alvarado, and followed by Daniel Chavez, followed by Damaris Martinez.
Good evening, dear members of school board, superintendent, Cleveland principal, and parents. My name is Jason Arevalo, and I have one child in Cleveland school. We Cleveland parents care for and want to support our children, so you heard that we have a proposal to help our students learning better their reading and math subjects in school, in our homes. At school, we hope to help Cleveland students by enhancing their after-school program with knowledgeable volunteers, but at home, parents need help too. The school parent of our project is to get more training for parents in math. Yes, we want to learn the new math methods so we can help our children at school with their homework. We understand that the teaching methods have changed, and that this new method can be challenging even for the teachers. Therefore, we would like to request training in math for parents at Cleveland so we can help our children with their math homework. We offer on our end to attend, bring more parents to the training. We hope you can help us and support our principal to make this possible. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have Daniel Chavez.
Hola, buenas noches a todos ustedes, a la mesa directiva y al distrito escolar y a todos los presentes. Mi nombre es Daniel Chávez. Asisto a las clases de Padres Adelante y orgullosamente pertenezco a la Escuela Autónoma Adelante, en la cual tengo una niña que cursa actualmente el 5º grado. El motivo por el cual estoy esta noche ante ustedes es para sugerirles y pedirles que a los alumnos que actualmente se encuentran como aprendices de inglés y que están en el nivel 3, en el examen de CEL sean monitoreados más constantemente, para que de esta forma estos alumnos puedan reclasificarse lo más pronto posible. Tomando en cuenta como ejemplo las estadísticas de descenso del lenguaje de nuestra escuela, hemos notado que se encuentran en un nivel 3. Y creemos que si implementamos esta sugerencia, estos alumnos, siendo monitoreados y seguidos constantemente por maestros, consejeros y sobre todo por padres de familia, lograrán una reclasificación para que de este modo en su futuro académico cercano puedan tomar clases normales y regulares y no se sientan rezagados. Les doy las gracias de antemano por este espacio y por su tiempo y les agradezco mucho y que tengan una buena noche a todos.
Thank you.
Oh, perdón.
Good evening, members of the Board of the School District and all present. My name is Daniel Chavez. I am a parent at Adelante Charter School, and I am taking the Padres Adelante class at that school. I am a father of a daughter who is in 5th grade. The reason why I am before you this evening is to suggest and ask that English learners in the schools that are at level 3 on the CELT be closely monitored by teachers, counselors, and parents in the process to achieve the reclassification of these students once they arrive at level 4 or 5. Taking the example of language census statistics of our school, we note that with the implementation of the suggestion, these students will achieve reclassification as soon as it is possible. As they meet the eligibility requirement, they will then be able to take regular classes going forward. I thank you for your time and attention, and wishing a good evening to all those present. Thank you. Daniel Chavez.
Muy buenas tardes, miembros de la mesa directiva y administradores del distrito escolar, así como a todos los presentes. Mi nombre es Damaris Martínez y yo asisto a la clase de Padres Adelante a la escuela Adelante Charter School, en la cual asiste mi hijo Valentino Hilario Castro Martínez, cursando orgullosamente el 6º grado. Doy gracias a estos programas que benefician el desarrollo del estudiante, así como a nosotros los padres. La razón por la que estoy presente ante ustedes es para agradecer a las nuevas aulas que contamos en nuestra escuela, lo cual sabemos que ha sido logrado por un gran esfuerzo de los colaboradores que han hecho esto. Son de gran ayuda para nuestra comunidad y son de gran rendimiento en los alumnos. Y ya casi así, con esta situación, ellos tienen más espacio. También podemos contar con jardines en áreas adecuadas y que se encuentran en un buen estado. Esto hace que la escuela se vea más presentable y activa. Sabemos que a cada escuela tiene diferentes necesidades y por tal motivo deciden de cómo van a usar sus fondos del Estado. Por esta razón queremos asegurar que no nos fallen de proveer el apoyo a nuestra escuela para el mejoramiento del alumnado. Por su atención, muchas gracias y muy buenas noches a todos.
Good evening, members of the school board, school district administrators, and everyone here present this evening. My name is Damaris Martinez, and I attend the Padres Adelante class at Adelante Charter School, in which my son Valentino Hilario Martinez Castro proudly attends the 6th grade. I am thankful for these programs that benefit the development of the students as well as us parents. The reason why I am present before you is to say thank you for the new classrooms we have in our school. We know this has been accomplished through a great effort and collaboration. These classrooms are very helpful to our school community and contribute to good student performance. And through these improved spaces, our students are happier, and by having attractive gardens in appropriate areas that are in a good condition, this makes the school look more presentable and active. We know that each school has different needs, and therefore you must decide on how funds will be used that are received from the state. For this reason, we want to ensure you continue to provide support to our school to improve student achievement. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and good evening, everyone.
Thank you. And the next 3 speakers we have up is Yolana Torres, followed by Sinula Diaz, followed by Kenneth Locke.
Buenas tardes, miembros de la mesa directiva, administradores del distrito escolar y todos presentes. Mi nombre es Juliana Torres. Tengo una niña en 4º grado y un niño en 1er grado. Asisto en la clase Padres Adelante en la Escuela Adelante Charter. Estoy aquí para agradecerles las diferentes oportunidades educativas que se ofrecen para padres en nuestra escuela. Han sido de mucha ayuda para abrir la comunicación con nuestros hijos y cerrar la brocha educativa. Gracias por su tiempo.
Good evening, board members, school district administrators, and all present this afternoon. My name is Juliana Torres. I have a daughter in the 4th grade and a child in 1st grade. I attend the Padres Adelante class at Adelante Charter School. I am here to say thank you for all the educational opportunities offered to parents in our school. They have been very helpful to open communication with our children and close the education gap. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Cynthia Diaz, and this is Samantha, my classmate. And we're here representing our Early Childhood Studies program from CSU Shannon Island. And we want the board to take time to address the fact that Proposition 58 is on the ballot, and we would like to share some information about it. We want to provide our students with the highest quality education and prepare them for college and careers. Proposition 58 supports English instruction for all students and provides schools and parents with a broader opportunity to offer multilingual programs. For example, for English learner students, they will be able to use their own language while at the same time they're learning English. And also for native English speakers will have the opportunity to learn a second language. The California Department of Education reports that only 400 out of 10,000 schools offer multilingual programs. Extensive research has shown that students who choose to participate in multilingual programs attain high levels of academic achievement, including English and other language proficiency. In fact, they repeatedly demonstrate greater achievement and higher scores in English only, higher scores than English only students. Under our current system, too many California students are being left behind and not given the opportunity to learn English with the most effective teaching methods possible, because Proposition 227, which restricts instructional methods school districts can use to teach English. This law also limits the ability of English-speaking students to participate in language immersion programs. Students with a strong proficiency in English who also speak another language are better prepared to compete in the global workforce. The advantage of being multilingual include higher paid jobs, increased creativity and thinking. If this proposition passes, the fiscal effect is not expected to be notably changed.
30 seconds.
Thank you very much.
And finally, we have Kenneth Locke.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I went before the city council today and I just brought up the whole idea of education, responsibility, that who has the responsibility to make sure the kids are educated. You know, I mentioned the parents and then the school and then possibly even the government. I mean, we're all kind of responsible. We should be all responsible for so that the kids get educations, become educated. But let's see, I spoke to you before about the whole basis of mental fitness and physical fitness. And when it comes down to it, that's what a child should reach, is a point of sound mind, sound body, you know, mentally fit, physically fit. And the idea is that that's the whole basis of them generating and increasing. So if I kind of asked who the most mentally and physically fit child currently in the school, and also the teacher, it'd be kind of good to recognize both of those individuals. Standard of education, that would represent kind of the standard, that we'd actually have somebody who would actually represent that standard. And I mentioned before the city that the basis of sports, and I'm finding that sports have actually caused the children not to develop properly when it comes to mental and physical fitness. And the idea that, I think I've mentioned this before, that the nature of competition. And the idea, on one side you have competition, and on the other side you have the idea of cooperation. And then I think the kids should have a program that where they actually cooperate together to actually increase their mental fitness and then also physical fitness, and actually eliminate the whole competitive. But just wanted to talk about that a little bit. And the idea, as I mentioned, the nature of coordination. I'm sorry to say that sports actually kind of does
30
not,
seconds.
does not evolve a person's coordination. It actually is degenerative, based on the fact that, just say with tennis, a person will develop one arm and become coordinated with one arm. Well, that's not really coordination, it turns out. And actually they become coordinated at kind of being not coordinated. It's just kind of like, again, a degenerative type of situation. Just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for public comment now, and there's 2 later.
Thank you. So we move on to item number D, acceptance of donations for October 25th, 2016. Do we have a motion to accept donations?
Move to approve, or move to accept with gratitude, I should say.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I would like to note that this week's donations totaled $71,962. That is a significant amount of money, I would say. So we move on to item number E on consent agenda. Board, do you have anything you would like to pull? No? If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Idelson, second by Mr. Herron. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We move on to item number F, which is public hearing of initial proposal for 2016-2017 collective bargaining with the California School Employees Association and its Santa Barbara chapter number 37. Mr. Matsuoka.
This is a standard opening for negotiations with our classified union. You can see we're only bargaining those 2 categories, and it's in preparation for negotiations around salary and benefits for this year only.
We have no questions, comments at this point?
Well, I'll make one comment.
Yes.
You know, in the future, 2 additional articles. You know, we get, for the last 2 years, we've had huge issues over heat in the hot time. I know back east, they have snow days. Have we ever considered heat days as a potential in the calendar, that when it comes time to close the school, it's not, well, how can we close the school because we have to teach those hours sometime? But maybe we look into the future, maybe somebody should look at the snow days or heat days for our schools.
Ms. Parker?
And presumably that would be with the SBTA, if we talked about that, correct?
Yes, do you want, well, I don't want to open that as
Right,
an
right,
agenda
right.
item.
Right,
but
absolutely not, just
I-
future.
That's just a comment, whether it's SPTA or CSEA or whoever. I know back east, snow days work.
Go ahead.
In response to that, I mean, some of the facilities that have air conditioning would not necessarily need that, so that would be something complicated.
Yes.
If the board wants us to have this conversation, I would want to hear from a majority of the board, because this is a really complicated topic. It really means extending the school year,
Yeah.
which would be a big negotiations, so, and a cost issue.
We have this on the action agenda, which is item number 1 on G1. So we can come back to it. If we have no other comments right now at this point in time, I'd like to close the public hearing and come back to our regular agenda, which is item G1, adoption of initial proposal for 2016-17 collective bargaining with the California School Employees Association in Santa Barbara, chapter number 37. And now we can continue our discussion.
I'll move to approve the initial proposal for the 16-17 collective bargaining with the CSEA.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. Before I say all those in favor, any more comments, questions? Board? Okay. If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to item number 2, board action on petition for readmission of expelled student, Education Code 48918, case number 2014-15-21.
In case number 2014-15-21, I move to approve the petition for readmission.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We move on to item number 3, board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 2016-17-05.
In case 2016-17-05, I move to approve the Administrative Hearing Panel's findings for a full expulsion for 1 school year ending in June 2017.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker. I will say Mr. Heron seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We move on to board action on student discipline, Education Code 48918, case number 2016-17-07.
In case 2016-17-07, I move to approve the stipulated agreement for a full expulsion for 1 school year ending in June 2017.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That moves us to item number 5, approval of supplemental education service as the SES provider contracts for the 2016-17 school year. Mr. Matsuoka.
And I will turn this item over to Ms. Wagenick. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Dr. Pauza, bring to you the annual approval of the Supplemental Education Services Provider Contract under ESSA. We are required to provide supplemental educational services to students attending Program Improvement Year 2 and beyond. And so we ask for your consideration and approval.
Questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the supplemental educational services provider contracts for the years 2016-2017 school year.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Idelson, seconded by Ms. Parker. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And item number 6, approval of California Healthy Kids Survey Memorandum of Understanding for the 2016-17 school year. Mr. Matsuoka.
Also presenting Ms. Wagenick.
Thank you, Board. I bring to you the annual approval of the California Healthy Kids survey memorandum of understanding between our district and West Ed to review the purpose of the Healthy Kids Survey is to really address those items in priority 6 of the LCAP, which is school connectedness, parent involvement, and staff response to school connectedness and safety.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Parker?
I'll move to
Well,
approve.
Okay.
You want to get on the floor? I'll move to approve the California Healthy Kids Survey Memorandum of Understanding for 16-17.
Mr. Herron?
I'll second it, but under discussion?
Yes, go ahead.
On page 2, the 7th line, 6th or 7th line down, the survey should be offered to all teachers, administrators, and other certified staff, including paraprofessionals and aides, and to all personnel working in the areas of counseling, health prevention, and safety. In the past, I think 1 year, I saw a addendum that actually surveyed special education or staff in special education. Do we still do that? Do we order that separate addendum?
We're able to order or even add our own questions in as part of this. We are not specifically surveying special education teachers this year, but yes, we're able to
Then
add those.
how do we get information from paraprofessionals and aides?
Well, we actually, all staff members are eligible to take the survey, and we encourage them to. What we did in the past was ask specific questions only of folks who worked within special education.
Exactly.
A group of them. So
We're
we would
not
have to
doing that this year?
We're not doing that this year.
When was the last time we did that?
I don't know.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's set in concrete that we're not, and I don't know what the cost is, but it seems under the current situation, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? We have a motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Mr. Herron. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. We move on to item number 7, second reading and recommendation for adoption of Board Policy 3280, sale or lease of district-owned real property. Mr. Matsuoka.
I believe the board gave some input about, I think it was language around, was it dates? So we took those back, and Ms. Jateo will walk you through the changes.
Good evening, board members. So on October 10th, the board requested that I bring back the BP 3280 with the recommended language actually in the document. So that's what I have done for you today. So at the bottom of page 1, the sale or lease of real property. So this is the recommended language that we had, and this is the district may sell or lease the property up to it not exceeding 99 years. And then on page 3 of 4 at the top, this is the board may enter into a lease agreement with a joint occupancy, and that lease is not to exceed 66 years. And then the use of proceeds is going to be completely deleted from this BP.
Ms. Parker.
Great, thank you. I mean, you were saying all that before, but it was just nice to see it in print because otherwise it was hard to keep track of. So I don't have any further suggestions on the language. I'm willing to go ahead and make a motion that we approve board policy, the update to board policy 3280 at this second reading.
Second that.
You have a motion and a second. Motion by Ms. Parker, seconded by Mr. Herron. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We move to item number 8, annual report of teacher assignments and approval of resolution number 2016-17-18, annual report of teacher assignments. Mr. Matsuoka.
And President Paz, you had sent me a question about that, and Mr. Torina sent me the answer. I neglected to get it out to you, so why don't we share that answer with the entire board, and then you could ask questions. So,
Sure.
Mr. Torina first, here's an overview of this resolution.
So the Commission on Teacher Credentialing permits districts to authorize educators that are certificated to instruct in areas outside of the credential area based on various education codes. It also allows our speech language therapists to continue their work based on current state license at MA degrees in communication disorders and passage of the CBEST exam. Education Code 44258.9 in turn requires that the boards of education take action to approve the assignments annually. The board is required to take action even if an employee holds a supplemental credential in their appropriate subject area, because supplemental credentials are valid up to grade 9 only. So the recommendation is to approve the additional annual report of teacher assignments, and the resolution number is 2016/1718.
Your question. You want to ask your question?
Yeah, if you, yeah. Do you want me to ask it? So I had a couple of questions for staff on this particular agenda item. One was, I don't remember, I think I had 2 questions or 3 questions put into one. One was, do folks that go on this list, once they're on this list, are they on this list indefinitely? Meaning, are they on the list until and up to the point in time that they get a credential in their respective area that they're teaching right now, or is it a temporary thing? And then the other question I think I had to do with, let me see. Yes. The other question was more to do with, for some, I found their respective area was a stretch, but not a lot. And for some, it's much more of a stretch. Like, they're really not teaching in their area. And so I worry about that in terms of the length of time. And it goes back to sort of the original question of how much time and what happens then. What happens after this year?
So there is a limited time which anybody can be permitted to do work that's outside of the credential. Part of what happens is there's a process by which, if you have a permit for 1 year, then you have to show progress either in a program or progress towards the credential that you are being permitted for. And that usually depends on the teacher's background, what they've taken as previous courses. It usually will not last beyond 3 years. And just to show you that we are completely compliant, part of the federal programming that came through, there was an area of teacher being in a credentialed and qualified area of teaching, and there were no hits on that review. So Ann Peak, our certificated coordinator, is very versed and works with our county head office and the CTC to make sure that when we do permit somebody, what that length of time is, we make sure that that credentialed teacher or permitted teacher has awareness of that, and we stay on them, because when they are not or no longer permitted to teach, we actually will take them out of the classroom. And we had an incident just recently where things were submitted. CTC initially did not see part of that progress, so we had to basically take her out of the classroom. And then they reviewed it twice and decided that what was submitted earlier was valid, and so we put the teacher back in the classroom. So it is something that we are aware of and monitor pretty closely.
I know for us, later on the agenda, we're going to have discussion of certificated hiring systems for the district. So it comes back to that sort of question overall. For some areas, I know we are challenged, and then for other areas, I think it's sort of a larger discussion that the board has grappled with, will continue to grapple with. I know staff has tried to grapple with it, and we're obviously looking at it in terms of board policy 5116.1 and 5117 in terms of starting our transfer policy a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all these are interrelated to a degree. I just have to express my concerns because I look at it, and for some it's an easy stretch.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it's a little harder. So it's like one you have to sit there and go, And I look at it from a perspective of someone in the community looking at our teachers and realizing, well, they teach their credentials over here and they're teaching way over here. So it is a concern, but thank you for that answer. Board, any other questions, comments on this?
It looks
Ms. Idelson.
like quite a number of them are doing coaching, which can be understandable that they wouldn't necessarily go get their credential in physical education, but they're, a baseball coach or a football coach.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
That-
for one period, it looks like, is
Yes.
that the allowed? Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, do we have a motion for this item?
I'll make a motion as moved for the teacher assignments and approval of resolution number 2016-17-18, annual report of teacher assignments.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Adelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And
Motion passes 5-0.
we have a public comment.
And we have public comment on the next item. It's for the approval of provision of requested special education therapeutic learning center services memorandum of understanding.
We have a speaker card from Deborah Reed.
Good evening, members of the board, and Dr. Matsuoka. My name is Deborah Reed. I am the special education teacher and case manager for Santa Barbara High School's Therapeutic Learning Center. I'm here this evening as representative of the Special Education Direct Services staff. Dr. Matsuoka recently presided over a series of meetings with members of Santa Barbara Unified School District special ed teachers, speech therapists, psychologists, occupational therapists, other direct service providers. In these meetings, Dr. Matsuoka expressed concern about maintaining open lines of communication and transparency, and in keeping with the spirit of Dr. Matsuoka's actions, I'm here to ask some questions about the memorandum. Specifically, board members I believe, received an email from one of my coworkers, Juan Gallardo. I don't know if you need me to actually go through what the MOU states. You're familiar with it? Okay. The program that is currently in place is a district-led companion program to the CTE program. That's a regional program that SELPA oversees. And taking students from the Carpinteria district, we seem to be changing the format of the Santa Barbara High School program to be more of a program similar to the CTE programs, and we were questioning whether SELPA was considered before these changes were made. We would like to know that if the regional programs are available for students outside of Santa Barbara High School district area, and if Santa Barbara High School is now to accept students from outside the district or our specific high school area, what will happen to students in our program area if all the places are full? We currently have a cap of 12 students. We would also like to know that what the process of referral is. We have that in paper. It's not currently being practiced and the way it's applied to admissions for students. We are currently understaffed. We are short one school psychologist. On the budget that was accompanied the memorandum of understanding, there were a couple of numerical errors, and we're concerned about those. Originally, the cap was listed at 17. It's been adjusted now in a revised copy that you received.
30 seconds.
To be at 11. My salary was misrepresented as $136,891, which affects the overall budgeting for services provided to the students. We would respectfully ask that there's an opportunity to be included in discussions about changes to the program, as well as having the board take a look at the figures in this to determine whether there are additional errors.
Thank you.
Would you like to present the item, and then we can have some discussion on the board?
Sure. So let's invite Ms. Rodriguez up to present the item and answer any questions, and then the board can discuss and deliberate.
Good evening, Dr. Pedro Paz and President Dr.
Pedro Paz, and cabinet members, and also board members, and Superintendent Matsuoka, and also guests. I'm here to present the Memorandum of Understanding with Carpinteria. What usually happens in our SALPA is that we have regional programs, and we also created our own ED programs for elementary and high school, because at that time we did not have space in our regional programs. So what we do is that certainly we look first towards our regional programs to fill those spaces. And the reason why this MOU was developed, because at the time last spring when Mrs. Escobedo was here, she was working with Carpinteria, and there was a student that our partner schools do not have the ED programs. Once in a while they'll get one or two, so they'll look towards the larger district, which would be us in the SALPA, that we are able to have a continuum of services. And as a result, at that time when we were projecting out in both Dos Pueblos and San Marcos, those programs were capped at 12. That's where our cap is. So then we turned toward our district programs. In this case, it was Santa Barbara High School District. They had space. And so during the summer, in August 18th, Mrs. Escobedo worked with our office, and we held an IEP, because we can't just place students in these programs. It has to be an IEP team decision. At that time, the IEP members that included the Santa Barbara High School TLC teacher and the site administrator, an administrator from our office, and Mrs. Escobedo, and they discussed at that meeting if this would be the appropriate placement. And at that time, all members and the IEP signed it and said this would be the appropriate placement. Once that happened, we developed an interdistrict transfer document where the parents signed, and we submitted it to Student Services. And then at that time, we placed the student there. The next step was to develop a memorandum of understanding, which we did. And that was with Carpinteria in our office, and also with Fiscal. And so Fiscal created the worksheet, and yes, there are some errors that need to be corrected. In addition to, we created the MOU. So now we're here, and if you note in the MOU in item number 8, it indicates that the first quarter, whatever the calculation is, and then every quarter we will re-look and revisit. So we've already surpassed the first quarter of July, August, and September. October starts the second quarter, and we are readjusting because of the numbers of the students in the classroom. So at this time, the the cost will increase, and what it is that we are capturing the cost for the student from CARP that is in our program. And we'd like for you to approve of this memorandum. The student is in our program currently.
Ms. Parker.
So we are open to interdistrict transfers, and we can take students from outside of our district. And this is sort of an interesting conversation, because it's totally reversing my thinking on it, because we could never say no to a student that requested a transfer in just because that student is special education. And even though that student would bring extra costs to the district, and especially once you've sat down and had an IEP where this is not only that we take interdistrict transfers, but this is actually an appropriate placement, and the student is currently at Santa Barbara High. I think what I'm appreciating about this MOU is that actually Carpinteria has no, they don't have to reimburse us, essentially. I mean, I think that it is it's a real bonus for us that we're able to negotiate this in a way that we feel like we're partners with them, and that we can work that out together to make it more streamlined and sort of out of the interdistrict transfer process. And so that's really changing my thinking about it. But I don't know if to me, if we are teaching this student currently, and that we are really clear that this is not changing the cap, then this is probably of benefit to the district. Although it sounds like it would have been much more, it would have been a much simpler process if we'd had this discussion, especially with the TLC team beforehand.
I believe that did occur. It occurred in the spring. And just so you to know that we cannot place students without an IEP team approval. So there was discussion last spring in June, and then we took it again in August. So it wasn't something that was new. I think the confusion was the worksheet where they said they saw 17 and they thought the assumptions came that we were changing the program. The program still remains the same. It will have a cap of 12. And yes, we do try and fill our regional programs first prior to filling our district programs.
Let me ask a clarifying question of staff, because there was something about inter-district transfers. I want to make sure that the thought is in the right sequence. So right now, we are not open to inter-district transfers as a district. That's just sort of broadly.
Actually, we are. I mean, we have restricted amounts, but yes, we do take inter-district transfers.
What would be the conditions under which we would accept an inter-district?
So we would accept inter-district transfers that apply per the board policy during the window. Families that apply outside of that window, we generally do not grant. There can be an appeal to that. So that's basically the process. It sounds like in this case, it was outside of the window, and it came in through the SELPA decision-making process.
Right. I was just pointing out, though, that any family in the window, if they were putting in a transfer in the window, if it's a special ed student, we treat them just as if they're any student, rightfully so.
Okay.
I think we have a limit of, is it 100 inter-district? Of which 25 can be at OAS?
I believe we removed that cap last year.
The 100 cap?
But we removed the cap last year, and but OAS students had priority in terms of if we met a cap. So, but going back to what we were talking about earlier, in terms of special education, we, as with any student, if a school is capped or a program is capped, so students who have IEPs who apply for inter-district transfers, it goes through a process that we look to make sure that a school is not impacted in any program based on that student's IEP.
Did we charge too little for the last 3 months?
I believe that because of the calculations, yes. But that was the last 3 months. We're going to start this month in October, or we're going to charge the whatever it is. And it's going to fluctuate. That's why we put in item number 8 that quarterly we will look at it. Because if we drop down to 8 students, the amount will increase. But if we bump up to at least 12 students, then it will decrease. So it depends.
The 2 letters that I've received have a multitude of issues in them that I obviously am not, I can't analyze them to that degree. It's not my job. But I hope that the letters, each of the individual issues in the letters get looked at and get answered in some matter of fact.
I do not have copy of those letters. So if somebody can give us copies, then we can look at those
Okay, I thought the world got copies.
Well, and I'd actually like to comment on that because I think we all received at least 2 letters, and I think one of the things that concerns me is we, the district, have been intentional about trying to improve communication, particularly around special ed. And I actually did notice that in both of the emails, we did not include you and other senior members of the special ed team. You were not included in the email. And I'm a little concerned that the listening tours that happened had an unintended consequence of not directly working with the special ed department, because what was included was, I felt like two totally different things were being talked about, one from the side of the district and one from the side of the individuals who emailed us. And it was very hard to align those. And so I just want to be careful that in our effort to really try to do better, I mean, our communication across this district needs to improve, but I know that we've been very intentional about improving the work around special education, that we don't have this negative unintended consequence, because you're saying you didn't receive a copy. I'm reading these two things, looking at the agenda item, and I'm going, wait, what's happening? What's being talked about? Are we actually talking about the same thing? And so I'm a little concerned and want to encourage whatever future communication happens, that we do include the special ed department, I think, our leaderships, because this was, I wanted to say, help me understand this. And I think there's really valid points and concerns that are being raised in the letters we received, but I just didn't know I thought we were talking about different things. So, I wanted to share that, because I feel like as we move forward, it's going to be very important that in order to do right for special ed, for first and foremost for our students, for the families, we have to include all stakeholders, and that includes the special ed department as well.
Any other comments, questions? Do we then have a motion for this item?
With the understanding that this is essentially to pay for a student that is currently, we are not being reimbursed for, who is already in our program, I will move to approve the provision of requested special education therapeutic learning services, the memorandum of understanding.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to item number 10, discussion and approval of Title I effectiveness of programs evaluation. Mr. Matsuoka.
And this is Dr. Ramirez, who needs this report and approval by the board as part of our ongoing efforts around clearing the findings of federal program review and program improvement.
Good evening, board. Good evening, Dr. Paz, cabinet, Mr. Matsuoka. I went ahead and this is a conversation, again, to come off of Mr. Matsuoka's point. We, last spring, if you may recall, we, and it's part of the attachments, we discussed the local education plan, what was formerly called the LEAP, an addendum to that plan. In looking at preparing these materials, I included a brief narrative just to give you some background, including the evaluation document itself. I really wanted to start here and just indicate that what we're talking about here is an evaluation of that plan, and so it was important for me to add it as an attachment to give you some reference point. Again, we are talking about the ESEA, not ESSA. And so in some ways, we are looking a bit back in time here. And nevertheless, we need to consider that in light of our findings, and also just to strengthen our protocols around evaluation. It's also, it really is intended to monitor and evaluate the integrated and coordinated actions, really, to support students largely in need. Those particularly the ones that are addressed in the focus of Titles 1, 2, and 3. One of the things that this really brought me to is that this system, and kind of reflecting on it, this system really attempted to replicate what LCAP really does for us now, and does in fact much better, because it really drives a very public discourse and a public discussion, not only about resource allocation, but really goal setting. And so it was my attempt not to create something new or different, but rather to crosswalk that with a process that is here now and much more relevant in 2016 as opposed to 2006. So one point that I did want to make is that second bullet, LCAP does not replace at this point the federal requirements related to LEA plans, but it is likely to in the future. That is something that is being discussed as a negotiation between State Board of Ed and the federal government. So in essence, what you see as part of the evaluation is an evaluation of three components of our LCAP goals that are a crosswalk of that previous addendum. Goal 1 of life, career, and college-ready students. Goal 2 is student, family, and community engagement, and Goal 3 of early childhood ed. And with particular focus on actions that are multi-funded through federal funds and state funds as well. And each component of those goals is then divided into four subcomponents or subcategories. Activities that work well for the district, and it's more or less of a snapshot. Activities that will continue for the district with minimal modifications, and activities that will continue for the district with significant modifications, as well as those that we will discontinue. So board action is required, and it does require a board vote in order to document and ensure that we are going through formal channels in terms of this evaluation. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up to any questions you may have.
Board, any questions, comments? Ms. Parker?
Just thank you, Dr. Ramirez, and it was very straightforward and a nice crosswalk, as you put it. I'm always floored at these documents and who must read these from district after district on the other side, and I hope that they get therapy. But this is really well done, and it's great for us. I just can't imagine reading many of them.
Well, CDE has been very, very gracious with us. They've been very supportive, and they recognize that we are trying to live in two worlds at this point. They know that. So at this point, really, our attempt is just to make it useful for us, make it relevant. If this were 2006, this would be a much more relevant and useful document for us. But we're here now, and we have an LCAP, and we have an LCAP process, and we have just the robust nature of that process itself. It just completely dwarfs anything that was a part of this, even when districts were going through this with the best of intentions and in a very meticulous way. So we're thankful for that, but at the same time, it's just one of those things that we now just need to follow through upon and make sure we just keep chucking away at those findings.
Ms. Sima.
So 2 questions that actually came up in the conversation. For the LEAP addendum that was added, it's a different document. It's the one with the 5 pages. The first one talks about the life, career, and college readiness students, and then it talks about specifically accelerated growth for Hispanic, Latino, and English learners and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. And I see that the result that you shared with us includes information about reclassified students and EL students, but I was just curious why we didn't see another subgroup, Hispanic, Latino, since that was indeed mentioned as a subgroup in the desired outcome, but the results weren't there in the results category.
Yeah, sorry, that must have been an omission. I took a lot of this language directly from LCAP, from actually this LCAP that was reapproved in August. And so it really is just drawn directly from there. So if the results don't bear out and aren't in full alignment, that was an error of omission on my part.
The second question that I have is in the plan component goal 2. Essentially, that we want engagement, and the way we measure it is through a survey on the perception of from parents. Are there other indicators besides a perception survey that might be worth looking at?
There are none that are documented in LCAP yet.
Okay.
So I think that's a great conversation to have as it pertains to this next round, is to establish better markers or more robust markers now that we're coming into our 4th iteration of LCAP. This is really what's there at this point, and I know that we've had these discussions openly as far as the extent to which we can measure involvement versus engagement, and those are two different activities, if you will. So we recognize that, and I know that Dr. Mora's office has been working really closely with Dr. Guillermo Juan to try to get at that, and I know some things have come forward to you in the last few months to identify some of the surveys that have been used for activities such as the one that you saw tonight, to help us in that regard. But right now, as it pertains to LCAP, these perception surveys are essentially what we have. So that's probably a next step for us.
And I'll mention that too, because one of the comments, one of the speakers today, I think, that came was inviting, I don't know if it was the district or the board, to come to one of the meetings and give information about how the district works. And so I started, as she was talking about that, I was thinking of some of the documents we use to measure, to understand how our schools are doing. And so I was thinking about the comprehensive plans and the fact that they're really not translated. They're in English. So if a parent wanted to, like if you look at our website, if a parent really wanted to be engaged at that level, they wouldn't have access to. And so we've gone back and forth. These are huge documents. Do they get translated or not? We've talked about the capacity for interpretation and translation in our district. So I think it's bigger, but I feel like all these things sometimes tie in. Like I was like, oh yeah, well how would I, where would I tell, like I've given presentations to the Parent-School Partnership parents multiple times, and I can't tell them, oh, go look at your site plan, go look at certain documents, because they don't exist in Spanish.
Well, if I can make just one correction, they actually do.
Okay, then maybe I'm not looking in the right place.
For 2 years running, we've been able to translate all of our single plans in different intervals of time. So if they're not on the website, that's something that we'll look into because.
So then I stand corrected. Maybe I just need the link. If anyone can share what the link are in Spanish.
They should be on the website. I haven't looked there, recently, but the 15, 16 should be, as they are translated, they are uploaded onto the website. They are sent to the site and uploaded onto the website. So if they happen not to be there, I'll go ahead and double check myself and make sure that we upload this previous year's plans.
Well, that's great, and that's good
That
to
would make
know.
2 years in a row that
Perfect.
we've been able to translate all of those plans.
Great, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, board? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve. What is the official title?
Title I, Effectiveness of Programs of
there you go.
Evaluation. Yes.
So moved.
I'll second it.
A motion by Ms. Limon, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0.
Before we move on to the next item, I just want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Ramirez and Ms. Waganek in this whole area. This has been a heavy lift my first 3 to 4 months, and we received news 2 weeks ago that Ms. Waganek and I do not have to go to the State Board of Ed meeting next week in Sacramento. We were really happy about that. It just shows you, I think they're, we're building a relationship with their department. They're watching us deliver documents, results. So I think they're, we're trying, and they see that. So, but these two have been doing a lot of work. So just want to appreciate them.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
That moves us to item number 11, approval of bond measures Q and R Citizens Oversight Committee members. Mr. Matsuoka.
And Mr. Che will walk you through this item and respond to any questions.
Thank you, Board. So, as you know, we have 4 oversight committees, 2 for the parcel tax and 2 for the bond. Our Measure Q bond measure oversight committee is almost fully staffed if you accept our Ms. Flores, who applied to serve on the Measure Q bond oversight. She's a parent guardian with a child at the Santa Barbara Unified School District and is a member of the parent-teacher organization. So I'm asking you to approve Ms. Flores as the parent representative on the Measure Q.
Do you want us to take these separately?
I'll do it any way you want. Or I can bring up Measure R.
Yeah, same item.
Yeah.
Okay, so Measure R, we have 3 of our current board members who were up and are committee oversight members, and they have all 3 said yes to coming back, and that's Frank Stevens with the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation, Lang Sly, community member and representative, and Monica Cardrelli, and she's our parent representative.
Ms. Jete, I think you jumped forward to measure partial tax A
R.
and B. R up here says Taryn O'Neill.
Right, well, I'm just giving you a little background that 3 of them have agreed
Okay.
for another 2 years.
Okay.
I wanted to give them a shout out.
Okay.
Because it's not easy to find people, and we really do appreciate. But Miss O'Neill has a background in accounting, and her application is to serve as the tax preparer for the Measure R. We will have one more, I believe, we have one more position to fill on that. Yes, one more after, if you accept Ms. O'Neill. And we would have been fully staffed, or fully, the members would have been, all the seats would have been filled on Measure Q if I had done this presentation by 2:30 this afternoon, but we had a resignation at 3 o'clock.
Oh, darn.
Oh, dang it. So anyway, we're hoping that you accept Ms. Flores for Measure Q and Ms. O'Neill for Measure R.
I move to approve the appointment of Ms. Flores to Measure Q and Ms. O'Neill to Measure R and thank them for their service.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Ms. Parker, seconded by Ms. Idelson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We move to item number 12, approval of parcel tax measure A 2012 and B 2012 Citizen Oversight Committee membership updates.
Sorry about that. So I want to acknowledge that we don't have any appointments at this time, but we do have 3 members that said they would stay on with the Measure A and B. Frank Stevens, again, he is on the Measure A, and he has volunteered to serve a 2nd term. And Victor Wadez, and he's his 1st term ended, and he's volunteered to do it again, and so is Lang Sly. So I just wanted to, if you could approve them also.
I'll move to approve the parcel tax A 2012 and B 2012 citizens oversight of those 2 members members you've mentioned.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Idelson, seconded by Ms. Parker. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We move to the conference agenda. First item is Program of Choice Reports for Adams Elementary School. Mr. Matsuoka.
Yeah, we don't need any introduction from Dr. Ramirez. So we welcome Dr. Alzina. And remember, there was the other elementary programs of choice, so we're catching up with her. So she'll present her work at Adams and give the board a chance to ask any questions.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and members of cabinet. I first want to say thank you. This is our 6th year of having the Montessori program of choice at Adams, and thank you for believing in my leadership skills and our vision of really creating an option for all children, regardless of income, and really wanting to level the equity gap and close the equity gap in our community. I'll remind you that Santa Barbara Unified School District is the only school district in Santa Barbara County that offers an authentic Montessori option with 2 teachers that have Montessori credentials. Maria Montessori did not patent her name, so anyone can call themselves Montessori, but we are really proud to say that we have 2 teachers that have both a California credential and a Montessori credential. So I know you received my report, and despite teaching to the test, you can see that our students have the highest performing subgroup in our district. Last year, in the 2014-15 school year, our students hit 89% of our students met or exceeded the standards in English language arts, and last year we went up to 93%. So that's all but 2 students. And that was 1 Hispanic student and 1 white student. And in math, we went from 59% to 69%. So we're continuing to close the achievement gap. We also have a 100% reclassification rate for all of our students that exited from 6th grade. All of them have been reclassified going into 7th grade for the last 2 years. So we're very proud of that, but it's not just our Montessori program, it's really our teachers, right? You can have an amazing program, but your program is only as good as your teachers, and we've been really blessed to have 2 superstar teachers that really believe in doing whatever it takes for all students, and that every teacher at Adams has an option to tutor after school for 2 hours a week, so they can use that on a Saturday school. Some teachers do that. Some choose to do an hour twice a week, but I will say our Montessori teachers would probably average 10 hours a week of after-school tutoring. 2 of it that they get paid for. The other 8 is it's just what you do. It's their heart and soul as their students. So really what our Montessori program really has done for Adams Elementary School is not just create a great opportunity for the students in that class, but all children. Today I had 20 Westmont students come to Adams Elementary School from the technology class, and they wanted to look at how we're using technology at Adams. And I walked them through our design center, our maker space. I walked them through all of our classrooms, but I also walked them through our Montessori classroom. And really, they said, you really can't tell a difference between the Montessori classroom and a traditional classroom. And for me, that's a real testament of the success of our Montessori program, because when we started it 6 years ago, we started it because we knew where the Common Core state standards were going, and we wanted to create a lab space for teachers to see how to support and really support differentiation and access for all students. And really, that's what has the Montessori classroom has really done that for all of our teachers. And so when you do walk into our traditional classrooms, you see students working at their table groups, some on the floor, some outside, and they're all working on their own individual projects or in small groups. So as you can see also in our test scores, we made great gains school-wide, not just in our Montessori program, but also for all students. So we went up 10% in English language arts and 7% in math. And again, it's just because everyone is really working together for all students. Something that's not in this report that we are doing is really wanting to target math this year. It's a school-wide goal, and you'll see that in my school site plan. But really utilizing all of our resources, one being our design center, our maker center. So we met with Amir probably about a month ago, Sean Fetterbush, who was the design center teacher, and really wanted to ensure that we were utilizing all of our resources in the best way possible to create a maker space for our students. And really, Amir encouraged us to continue to work on the path that we're on right now, by having our upper grade students create Montessori materials and then now teaching those lessons to our lower grade students. So now in our traditional classrooms, and now our traditional teachers have these materials in their classroom to utilize. So Montessori materials are very expensive, and they're hard to order. They take time. Now we have a space at Adams Elementary School where we can actually make those materials. Our students can teach them. They can utilize them in the traditional classrooms. Here's an example. Our kindergarten students were learning about inch, and a traditional teacher might take a ruler to teach inch, and so instead the students created 1 inch cuts of, I guess, on the plastic, for lack of a better word, and the kindergarten students use those 1 inches. How many do you need to create 10 inches? And so they were able to see, oh, that 1 inch, you put them all together, it makes 10 inches. How many do you need for 12 inches? And so therefore, they have a concrete understanding of what an inch means. And so we're really excited about moving forward and how to really utilize our partnerships in the best way that we can for all students. But again, I want to say thank you for believing in me and our vision and really creating a great Montessori program, but a great school at Adams. So thank you. Any questions?
Ms. Parker?
I'll just comment briefly, since of course I did have a student that benefited from the Montessori program, and I got to see it in action, but it is really impressive, and I wish that we had that kind of cross-seating. It is exactly what you would want in terms of a lab, sort of a lab program on a site, instead of a separate academy, a separate thing. It is something that cross-seeds, and so I really appreciated that, and I think it's been great for the school as a whole, and is really an example for what you can do with these types of alternative programs, so thank you. And what I had said to other, just to actually, I guess it was to Dr. Ramirez, was just the idea of the templates, having some consistency on the data that's presented around testing. I mean, everything that you presented is everything that you could present, so thank you. But I'll just again note that that's something that would be great to have consistency on. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, and thank you for believing in me and supporting this vision.
You just can't lose those teachers.
I know.
Any other questions, comments, board? Thank you. We move to item number 2, Santa Barbara Symphony and Bravo expansion presentation. Mr. Matsuoka.
And I see Dr. Ronzoni coming forward and another guest who she will introduce.
Another good evening, and thank you to the board and Superintendent Matsuoka and the cabinet for giving Dr. Amy Williams, to my left, the Santa Barbara Symphony's Director of Education and Community Engagement, and me, this opportunity to update you on the district and Symphony's partnership in support of the after-school music program, Bravo. So as Dr. Williams and I worked on the Bravo expansion plan last spring and through the summer, we were both amazed and grateful to the Santa Barbara community for the financial support they offered, which is helping us maximize our opportunities to bring additional music instruction to our upper elementary school students, further bolstering the investment that we're making in their during the day music program. And as I've learned from my 15 months in my new role as the director of, I don't know if it's so new though, after 15 months as director of visual and performing arts, it only strengthened my beliefs and insights that I gained in my 15 years as a principal regarding the critical role that the arts play in the growth of all students. That the school, district, and community partnerships are vital to strengthening access to and participation in arts education. So working with Dr. Williams, her staff, the Bravo staff, and our district music teachers is proving to be an exemplary model, which is effective because it incorporates many of the best practices in school community partnerships in arts education. As I've become more and more familiar with what's going on around the state and other partnerships, I think Dr. Williams and I can truly say we really are a model of some of the best practices that we see. I'm already getting calls about how are you making that work. Dr. Williams and I dreamed big about what we could do with the additional funding, our dedicated staff, and the synergistic know-how of programming for success that we think we might have. So Dr. Williams is now going to show you how that dreaming and planning is coming to fruition in support of our students. Okay, I have to click. You'll click. Some partnership.
Thank you, Dr. Ronzoni. And on behalf of the entire Santa Barbara Symphony Board and staff, I would like to thank you for believing in this partnership, as it really has opened the eyes of everyone as to what's possible with partnership and collaboration. With the changes made last spring by ICANN, the Santa Barbara Symphony was proud to come side the school district to build the necessary connections with not only music teachers, but also district administration and personnel to help meet the musical needs of the students that are enrolled in your elementary school programs. This not only fits within the mission of the Santa Barbara Symphony, but also gives myself, Symphony Board of Directors, and the entire staff at my organization great pride as we work towards our strategic goal of working with community to provide access to high-quality music instruction for all students throughout Santa Barbara. As you can see from this slide, the Bravo partnership fits beautifully within what we are already doing within the Santa Barbara Symphony's Music Education Center. This year, with our work with Bravo in addition, we are able to serve 8,000 students throughout the Santa Barbara community. That's bringing students from their first experience with an instrument in our music van into the programs that your schools are supporting through the school day, after-school music programs, our junior orchestra levels, and then our youth symphony. So as you can see, Bravo fits right in the middle of that by providing the after-school instruction twice a week. The collaboration and partnership between the Santa Barbara Symphony and Bravo has allowed us to pool resources in order to build the necessary environment to have multiple ensembles in order to meet the need of all student levels. And this is different than last year in that we're providing multiple levels of strings and multiple levels of band. In doing this, we have 7 Santa Barbara Unified School District teachers and 7 Santa Barbara Symphony teaching artists to provide a student-teacher ratio of 8-to-1, where previously it was 12-to-1. The teachers have also provided us the ability to open the program up to students in grades 4 through 6, and in some cases, grades 3, where we saw the need happen. And I must say that our teachers are fantastic, and they are what is driving the program. With this, they each come with individual and unique goals to their ensemble. Some learning basic technique, learning basic posture, learning basic musicianship, into our more advanced ensembles where they're really learning how to play in a group and what that means to their colleagues in that orchestra. We have also started through the request of the teachers beginning percussion. And this is new to Bravo, but I see it as so crucial to the music programs at the junior high and the high school level. Prior to this, percussion wasn't being brought in until the junior high level, and I describe this as the football approach, where you have to start them young to move them into, especially the marching bands, and it's all about high school and marching band this time of year. As you can see from this slide, our focus on student learning and achievement has taken the charts off of the enrollment. In 15-16, we had 120 students in grades 5 through 6. This year, in 2016, we were expecting 180. As of today, we have 230 students enrolled in Bravo. And this, you see, it's 204. It increased since this slide was created. We also have really good data from looking at our enrollment. And you can see, I'm sure you're noticing the discrepancy in the numbers where students are enrolled. And we are addressing those concerns. We are looking at any type of site issue that may occur. any type of transportation issue that may be occurring. And then whether the school has AOK and if that's an issue and how we need to work with an AOK program. So my prediction is that in 17-18, through diligent conversations that Dr. Ronzoni and myself will be having with teachers and sites, that we'll be able to see not only growth in the programs, but a real ability to have each school represented fully. And finally, with anything, growth in student enrollment causes growth of budget. And what was so exciting and telling to me, though, is that we were able to pull this off. From 2007 to 2015, Bravo was supported at a level of $30,000. By looking at personnel, transportation, teaching artists, site coordination, a site coordinator, which is actually very crucial position there, we now have a budget of $121,500. And this budget was met wholeheartedly through donors of the Santa Barbara Symphony coming forward to us asking how we can help, organizations in town coming forward saying, we want to be part of this, how can we help? So you can see the school district's resources, ICANN, Santa Barbara Bowl, Mosier Foundation, and Symphony donors all came together within the past 7-8 months to meet the budget of $121,500. So with this, you can see music education is a community conversation out there. And again, I'm very proud to be part of the Santa Barbara Symphony and being side by side with the district on this program. Thank you.
To see it in action, because this doesn't tell you the story of watching the kids come and they get off the buses, and of course it's the end of the school day, so you can imagine what it looks like. And then within 20 minutes, they're in these groups all over Santa Barbara Junior High. A shout out to them for welcoming us and giving us the space there. We had 4 rooms. What are we up to now? 9 classrooms that we take. To come any Monday or Thursday after 4, between 4 and 5 o'clock, to see what's going on. The parade, believe it or not, the holiday parade will be coming up. We'll be marching in the parade, and the concert schedule to be announced. So do come and join us and see what we're doing. I will not tell you all the benefits of music education for all of the kids' development. I can't say enough, and it's not just because that's my hat now. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Ms. Parker?
No questions. I think, Mr. Herron, have you already been to go see it?
Unfortunately, my schedule hasn't let me yet, but I will. I've talked to Dr. Williams, and I'll be there.
Okay, good. I would love to go see it too. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to the district, because it is hard to collaborate with outsiders. And I think it was really critical that we had Dr. Ronzoni in this role, because otherwise there would have not really been the right person to go to when ICANN had to pull out so suddenly. And so I think that a lot of students who were eager to make a leap up would not have had the opportunity with the existing Bravo program. And thank you to Dr. Williams in particular, and the Santa Barbara Symphony, but Dr. Williams in particular, because I know how hard you've been working on this. And it's really been a huge benefit for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Adelson?
I didn't hear mentioned about the instrumental, like, donations. Are those still ongoing?
You mean from ICANN?
Well, or just, how are the students receiving instruments? Are they still some students rent, or are they all provided?
Most of them, they all have an instrument from school, during the day. They get their
Okay.
instrument assigned to them when they select their instrument for our in-school program.
Mhm.
And we did come up a little bit short because our enrollment had grown, but the ICANN instruments were donated to the symphony. So if we had more students who wanted brass than we had in our inventory, then the symphony is holding those instruments for us to get there. We are short on chairs and stands. We weren't really, when Amy kept saying, I don't fail, Donna, we will get 180 students. I'm like, okay, and then now it's up to 240. I'm like, okay, she doesn't fail. So does that answer your question? They all have an instrument. It's either from school. I mean, they all have an instrument from school that they bring on the bus with them. That also adds to the fun when they arrive there. But if we need them because they changed focus from fourth grade strings to something else, then we do it through them. Okay.
That's good. It's tremendous. I'm just so impressed. Thank you.
Mr. Herron.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the citizens of Santa Barbara. For the last 8 years, we've had parcel taxes that have gone a long way to keep music in our schools. And if it wasn't for the past 8 years and that influence of parcel taxes, you wouldn't be able to do this. It would almost be impossible. So I'm happy that parcel taxes are going away, but I'm happy that we've incorporated music into our budget. But I'd like to thank the citizens for providing that infusion for us for the last 8 years.
I will add that in the past year, from being the person who was always on the phone last year calling my counterparts around the state, around the country actually, as we got started with a VAPA director in a program, now people are calling me, and they're like, wow, how did you get this? How come you have 100% participation? How do you do that in your elementary schools? And as we interviewed candidates for our music jobs, we actually have one who we eventually hired who actually cried when I took her to the music room and showed her what we had and what she was going to have available to her to teach. She said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. So we should be very proud. And I would also like to thank the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation because they were very helpful in coordinating a lot of the fundraising as well as the symphony. Thank you.
Thank you both for all the work. That moves us to item number 3, discussion of Board Policy 5116.1, inter-district open enrollment.
Can I ask us to move some items around?
Sure.
I see our Principal Sandoval sitting in the back, and he's here for the Cleveland topic. Let's move that forward, because he has a newborn at home, and he probably would like to be home or maybe sleeping. And then we'll do the HR systems, because that actually it frames why we're bringing those 2 board policies. Okay.
Sounds perfect. So we'll take item number 5 right now, and then followed by item number 6, and then come back to items 3 and 4.
And Ms. Wagenknecht has provided the background information and slide deck, and then Mr. Sandoval will certainly be part of this conversation. So first, Ms. Wagenknecht.
Thank you, Dr. Paz and board. I bring to you information on a proposed calendar change for Cleveland Elementary School. A little bit of background. It was interesting for me to go through this process because I got to learn how this came about. And in actually 1996, a call was put out to our elementary schools to, they needed a couple schools to pilot the idea of year-round schools and with the idea that continuous learning was best for students. And through this process, I learned that ultimately the goal was that all elementary schools in our district would become year-round schools, and they needed a couple of schools to go through that rigorous process of really examining it, looking at the different types of year-round configurations, different tracks, et cetera. Lisa Minotto, who has been a teacher at Cleveland since before the change to year-round, provided me with actually some documents from that process, and we got to look at those. So Cleveland did the intensive investigation. They said, okay, we'll jump in and do the pilot. But the district initiative never evolved. And the only other school to actually go to a year-round calendar was Santa Barbara Community Academy, and that was upon their inception several years later. At the time of the change, the enrollment at Cleveland was over 600 students, and at that time it was a high-performing similar school, even well into the early 2000s. So fast forward now 2 decades from when this was initially proposed, and our research and digging into things has shown that we have concerns about absence rates. First, Cleveland's chronic absence rate is the third highest of all elementary schools, behind only two schools of choice, OAS and Santa Barbara Community Academy. And in addition, the siblings of students attending Cleveland Elementary who go to Santa Barbara Junior High and Santa Barbara High School have higher rates of absence during the Cleveland intersessions and the extended winter break. We used ARIES to examine that data. Another piece that we looked at was the impact of open enrollment transfers and the enrollment for Cleveland. A school that was previously 600 plus students has lost 263 students. So we currently have 263 students enrolled in other elementary schools in our district, which explains why Cleveland's enrollment is roughly 340 students at this time. 102 of those students are currently enrolled at Franklin and 73 at Adelante, and it was important for us to look at that because that indicates that families are opting to go to still schools that are nearby, seemingly neighborhood schools. Academic achievement is also a concern at this time, and I know that Mr. Sandoval and his team are working hard to see growth for their students, but over 80% of the students at Cleveland did not meet proficiency in ELA and math in 2015-16. Indicating that the goal of continuous learning that was proposed is perhaps not being met. It was important that we talk to the faculty at Cleveland and get their input, because if this change comes about, it's going to impact them. It's a big culture change, and some of these folks have been there more than 20 years, since before the change. So Mr. Sandoval and I met with them, and their responses, the two big points that they gave were that they thought that year-round schools allowed for frequent breaks, which are advantageous. They felt very strongly that it prevented teacher burnout, that they were not as tired as their colleagues who teach in traditional calendars, and therefore that helps students. They also felt very strongly that by having the year-round calendar and having students off for 3 weeks at a time, they didn't have to reteach routines. So those were their two main points that they brought forward. Another was that it allows for supplemental support programming. So Cleveland previously had a robust intercession program. They had outside community agencies that came in and really provided intercession programming, both for remediation and enrichment. Unfortunately, in the last number of years, intercession hasn't been held at Cleveland. There's no structure currently to implement that, primarily because it requires teachers to be willing to work during the intercession periods. So what was previously a robust supplemental support program is no longer in existence. Communication, if this change is implemented, is going to be key. As I mentioned previously, we already met with the faculty to listen to them, to hear their concerns, and to pose questions. Tomorrow, Mr. Sandoval and I will be meeting with Cleveland families and their community partners to do the same, to listen to them, to hear their concerns, and would welcome any board members who are interested to also attend that session. And then, of course, if the change does come about, it would require a district-wide communication in terms of the change. We would want families who live in the Cleveland attendance area to know that the change had come about. We, of course, need to work with SBTA and CSEA and the staff at Cleveland to communicate out what the impact of the change would be. So at this point, we can open it up for questions. Mr. Sandoval is here to answer questions as well and can take the podium.
Ms. Simon.
Thank you. Hearing the presentation, I feel like I actually could probably be more okay if there was an overwhelming community, whether that included the staff, the teachers, the parents, to do it kind of based out of convenience. I think my one concern that I have is some of the data related to performance. Like, I don't know that the year-round school is directly a function of performance. It can be, but I haven't seen the evidence to show that that's the reason. I think for me, if the school community overwhelmingly wanted this, I personally could support it. But overwhelmingly, I think I would love to see kind of more details related to the conversations that were had with the staff besides those 2 bullet points. I'd love to know, I can't make it tomorrow, but how many parents attend, what they say. I think that's all important. I think the number that strikes me is the 142 students that are in the Cleveland attendance area but attend Franklin. I think Adelante is a different model and curriculum, and I actually would venture to say that the families were very intentional in choosing Adelante for other reasons. But I think also Franklin just is a different school as well. So I'd like to, I'm happy that it's being explored. I think this is 1998 to 2016 is a great time long enough to try it out and figure out if it works or doesn't. I think for me, the only thing is I want to be very careful that we don't misinterpret the facts and say that in any way this will, and it might, but I don't think we have evidence yet, or maybe I haven't seen the evidence that this will directly and immediately impact student achievement. But I think for me, it's just a matter of what the school community as a whole really wants and prefers, and for them to also assess both the limitations, especially since they have been with this model since 1998. So I don't know that I had a question so much as it was a comment, so sorry.
Before I lose the train of thought, when you listen to the community, there is the Cleveland community that's there, but it's harder to track down the community that has chosen other schools. And that's part of what we need to consider with this. The other thing about, student performance, there's like 12 factors that lead to a school's performance, but one of the strongest indicators in the research is a basic of attendance. Attendance makes a huge difference, especially for younger kids. So if we could improve the attendance at any of our schools, it's going to have a positive impact on student achievement.
So, Ms. Idelson and Ms. Parker.
Just a quick remark. My heart really goes out to the families where they've got kids in other schools that are on the traditional calendar, and they're balancing that, year-round calendar, because that basically, when I was reading the attendance data, that is a real hardship, for families where they've got childcare needs. And then I heard, and I don't know if it was a rumor or not, that having the year-round calendar at Cleveland, some families were like enrolling and then moving to take advantage of there being some time when they could get in earlier at Cleveland and get some childcare needs met. Has that actually been the case?
Since I've been there, that has not occurred. I think there's 2 cases that we suspected.
Okay.
But
so it wasn't
my
overwhelming.
first summer with there, I didn't see that. But I've heard, yes, that's been a practice in the past.
Okay.
Ms. Parker.
It's interesting. I was kind of thinking of it on the flip side with you about student achievement. Just that, originally the thought was that this would dramatically increase student achievement. And in terms of going year-round, to such an extent that there was actually a point that when I was on the board earlier where we had some people that wanted to move the entire district not that long ago, year-round. And as a parent at that point who had kids at multiple levels, I was like, this would just be horrible for families. And so in some ways, it has really surprised me that the number of families that do stay at Cleveland, because it is so hard to do if you have more than one kid. And so I really think about it on the family side. And I know that you will be meeting with families and starting to get a picture around this. And I just want to be careful, a couple things. I don't want to leap to any conclusions. You may want to share, I don't know if you've had parents say, I wish this is hard, I wish that this were Matt, but you may have parents who say, I absolutely love it this way. But I just think it's important that we're deliberate about it, that we take some time with it, that we don't rush it. If there are a lot of concerns, we can take longer, maybe not do it for the 17-18 school year and do it for 18-19 instead. But if that is a direction that we all want to go in. But I do think that Mr. Matsuoka's point about the families that aren't there is really important. I think it makes it's easier to segregate that school, for communities, for white families to choose to just say, I'm not going there because of the year-round schedule, but also just for families to make different choices just because of that calendar. And so I just want to be careful that we think about the families that aren't there too. So I'll be curious to see what comes forward out of your conversations.
And I could say
Sure.
that
Uh-huh.
in my first year there, I looked into a lot of things and just structures and what that looks like. And that's the reason I brought it up, asking, myself, why are we here? How did we get here? And what does it serve, 20 years later? And because I was having parents saying, I'm having a graduate and I'm leaving, and me having to have very difficult conversations to convince them to stay, or the fact that I'm signing, in my first year there, I signed 12 transfers because of our calendar. And looking at that, brought it to my attention saying, okay, if I lose 12 students on average every year in the enrollment, that's a teacher, that's other things that will be affected in domino. So that's something that just was brought up by the families, and that's why I had a conversation even with Raul and some of the people saying, what does this mean to us today? And it was because it was brought up by families and the conversations that they wanted to have with me about the year-round schedule. And that's how it started a conversation with me looking at the structure of the calendar.
Well, and just following up with that as we move on to the next board member is that I don't know if that came up with staff as well. They will have lost over the past decade, they will have lost a lot of colleagues because of shrinking enrollment there. And I don't know if that's been part of their conversation too. They may like the year-round schedule, but each year that the population there shrinks is another teacher that has to leave.
Mr. Hare.
I can see where Ms. Limon thinks Adelante might be immune from this, but I sure would like to know. And I think they should be a partner in discussions, and they may want to survey their students, because if, we've made decisions in the past where, like OAS lost how many students because of a decision we made? We make a decision and they lose 30, 40, 50 students. It has a bearing on their operation too. So I hope they're brought into the conversation and their needs are taken into consideration too, or how we can help them if in fact they are affected by it.
I would echo the comments of my fellow board members, especially on not knowing what you don't know, which is for those families who are not there, that's the information you will never know at this point in time unless we go out and ask those particular families that would otherwise have gone to Cleveland to understand why it is that they chose not to be there. I think that's an important piece to kind of understand the puzzle here that we're talking about, because they think you are faced with the reality is that right now you're looking at the future, and future's not looking that right now. And that's an important piece to kind of consider, regardless of whether we believe that it's for a variety of different reasons or it's just because of the calendar. So I think that's an important piece to think about, along with everything else. Any other comments, questions, board? Ms. Adelson?
I was just wondering, expense-wise, it's probably more expensive to keep this going year-round as a single school relative to the rest of the district? Is there more food service staff or things like that?
There are some minor issues around perhaps some overstaffing
Right.
that we would have to just live with, essentially, because of the transfer, employee transfer windows. But everything else is pretty
But currently, to
consistent.
have only 2 schools on a different calendar than the traditional calendar, does that run into additional expense?
If you look at, and this is another factor, if you look at factors around professional learning,
Mhm.
factors around facilitation of professional learning, access to professional learning, yes, that's where you start to see additional costs. So for example, this past, not this year, but a year ago, during our June Professional Learning Week, we didn't have any participation from Cleveland staff. So a lot of what was cited was, the need to have downtime between the end of the year and the start of the year for them. That's another consideration. This year, we had a writing institute in August that required sub-coverage of their staff. Now, fortunately, Mr. Sandoval and the staff were tremendous in making themselves accessible, and I think they got a lot out of it, but it led to additional sub-release time, whereas other teachers were able to come in and be compensated on their off time. So once you start looking at the costs that go beyond just the quantitative, you start to see that there is a significant impact. And one other point to note, because Cleveland is a home school, a child that arrives, let's say in August, believing that that's typically the start of the year, will have missed approximately 2 months of school. So that's 2 months of their second grade year or third grade year that they do not recuperate.
Right.
So those are the kinds of instances that we really need to consider.
Thank you.
If I could comment on that also, is that, so what we find when those happen, and we do have instances, is my office doesn't start students 2 months late. We have to then find them a place in a school that's starting. And then we offer to bus them sometimes up to Monroe, or across to Harding, or wherever it is that we have space, so that students don't lose that learning. But going back to the piece about being able to talk to the families who have transferred, parents have to indicate why they're asking for a transfer. And so anecdotally, I can tell you right now that so many of those that come through are because they're saying, year-round schedule, and we could actually pull the transfers from the last 3-4 years and give you hard numbers on how many folks have said that is the reason.
And I can share that it was 12 out of the 15 transfers this last year I signed that marked year-round calendar.
And I'd love to see a little bit more data, including, because this practice has been here since 1998, and we actually didn't always have the enrollment issue to this extent that it is now in the last years. Like in 1998, there were still more students than there are now. But I also think it begs to Ms. Parker's comment that it's easy to say that they're transferring because of the calendar year, when they don't want to say perhaps that there's other reasons. So how do we dig into the data a little bit, better? And it's also a more acceptable transfer reason for our school district to say that you're transferring because of the calendar as opposed to other reasons. So I do want to, but I think it'd just be good for us to see.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you so much. That moves us to item number 6. Then we'll come back to items 3 and 4. Discussion of certificated hiring systems for the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
I'll add some opening comments and then turn it over to Mr. Torino. In my landing in Santa Barbara Unified, listening to all kinds of groups, individuals, I'd say when I listened to our principals, my first 6 weeks on the job, and we were getting ready to open school, Hiring of staff came up pretty often. And then as I listened to you at, board meetings about hiring of special ed teachers is, we still have holes. Our special ed instructional assistants, we still have holes. And I just looked at the timing of our HR hiring process. We've got to move it earlier. The market for staff across the state has changed dramatically. There's a shortage of teachers. And we have a geographical problem and an advantage. It's rare that a school district has 3 credentialing programs in your backyard, but we've got to hire them.
Yeah.
We can't wait. I've heard story after story where we just waited too long and they got hired by other districts, some even out of the county. So this has been in discussion at the cabinet level and with our principals, leadership team. So Mr. Turina is going to walk you through this, but this is not a simple change. We realized how many other systems were interconnected. So, Mr. Turina.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka, President Dr. Paz, board members and cabinet. Just to start off with regards to hiring systems, I like the systems ideology because it's not a process, and a lot of folks, especially as we started this conversation early in the spring, actually late winter, we actually were looking at our hiring process, trying to move it earlier. And part of what happened was our first attempt at that was an isolated look at what we were doing, from who was being enrolled for our transfers to what types of teachers we needed, and then what process that we had. So what we've noticed, especially from the systems thinking area, is that we need to hire earlier. This is something that is not new. It's actually, in talking with my staff, they have said this is a conversation that has happened quite often for about the last 12 to 15 years. So what we've inherited is this idea that we need to hire earlier and smarter. Part of what Mr. Matsuoka was attending to is that we have teacher programs, and teachers are available. And the great thing about those programs is those student teachers, they've learned how to survive in Santa Barbara, not only through college, but through their teacher ed program. And so to be able to actually access and offer career positions to those teachers is critical on getting a staff that actually knows what it takes to come into Santa Barbara and live, and hopefully with offering them a career that can survive and thrive here in Santa Barbara. As far as these other observations, when we're looking at the system, if we're not hired by May, it is too late. And part of the process becomes not having a very strong candidate pool, but also having to wait longer because those who are coming have either been not hired from other districts, or the span between the time we get enough candidates to actually interview becomes longer. And then, and truly the idea of this information I'm providing for you this evening is to look specifically at our system of hiring needs and how we need to improve. So we have some goals for the 2017-18 school year, but that really actually begins this winter. If we could look at opening our hiring window March 1st. And the reason that's a significant date is because by March 15th, certificated staff are notified in all districts as through EdCode that they are not being reelected or brought back to a certain district. That also is right about the time where a lot of our teacher ed programs are finishing up some of their portfolios and the last line of work that's needed to get their credential. And then also that there's an idea in regards to if they know that there's openings at that time, there really is a different feel that they have in regards to coming to our district versus, as Mr. Matsuoka mentioned, we had folks who were asking, what do you have open for us, because I have another offer. And that was happening as early as late mid-March when we actually started opening our window. I think the big piece in regards to our goal is the last bullet, where we have 3 areas that we really need to have an intersection of information and data in regards to how we staff. And it's a little complicated, so we actually are going to go through some systems, because there's many systems that are involved. Part of the narrative actually describes each system individually, but I think as we go through this, there's ideas that we usually always think about: the general enrollment trends, who's coming to our school sites, the open enrollment transfers that happen in a time frame that we may need to, in fact, will need to adjust. The academy enrollment, that's something that's been an issue over the last few years, not just who and how, but the timing of that, because we've noticed that some of the academies don't align with our transfer window. Gate testing is something we've talked about, how many students are actually leaving our traditional sites and going to our charter schools as well. And then some things that we really don't have control over are the retirements and resignations and leaves of absences that come through. And also when sites have openings that teachers transfer from site to site, and if a declining enrollment happens at a school, then that teacher has to be placed somewhere else. So part of the information from this point on will be focusing on specific areas of the systems. So in our general enrollment trends, part of what we need to really look at is, what are they? We don't have a consistent collective data over years past of what our enrollment trends are, in the sense that knowing exactly how many are going to school. I know that Mr. Tate does a great job in doing our projected enrollment. The last 2 years have been a little different. The previous year we had a drop of about 150, and so that was an expectation that we anticipated to continue, and it didn't this current year. We are looking to consult with a firm that specializes in looking at enrollment trends, and hopefully we can get through another year with our current approach. And I think there needs to be some changes just in timing of how we do that in the next 2 months, since we are in October.
Let me interject right here. I actually had the conversation with a company, it's 2 women, Labkoff and Gobele. I worked with them in the Bay Area. My consultant from Milpitas, he says, I can't add another district. He's such a pro at it. These 2 are outstanding. I've asked them to give us a proposal. You'll see that at the November 17th board meeting, because the process takes 3 to 4 months when you start cold with the new school district. I mean, there's the amount of data that they need to analyze. It includes birth data, and they need to drive around our community. They need to actually feel it. I don't like it when demographers do it from a distance. You got to get on the ground, and that was the contrast. 2 districts ago, they did it from 300 miles away. And then Milpitas, he knew the city better than anybody. And it's the amount of data that we'll get it's rich. It's going to tell us about even that Cleveland. I mean, we will know so much about how our families are choosing. And then when it comes to facilities, I mean, what if a facility grew? What if Cleveland grew back to 500? Are we ready? And do we know all those potential shifts? So it's really important that we have this data. So you'll see that proposal next board meeting.
Another area that we have fairly good data on, but is to some degree out of our control, is what our general open enrollment transfers are. That's why Ms. Wagenknecht will be bringing you the board policies. We really need to move that window up to align with what we're doing as far as doing our counting, our open enrollment in regards to getting our student numbers. And then that also happens to be affected by our students who are choosing actual classes in our secondary. So in regards to just the overall numbers, this is maybe something that we've already talked about. For our elementary, it really is who's coming in, usually our TK and K levels. And then in secondary, it's more of those choices that are made and what schools need to offer what classes by choice and student requests. So we want to make sure that our open enrollment transfers are synchronized. And we talked about the system of our academies and GATE, and we want to basically align all those opportunities that we give to our families and students to go to where they want their choice. But we want to align them so we have all those numbers consistently, and so we can start really doing our work and looking at our staffing per school site. So we briefly talked about this, that our academy needs to do a little better job as far as facilitating earlier recruiting. I'm not sure exactly what our past year window was, but I know that there were times where they actually have to apply for a transfer prior to knowing whether they've been accepted into an academy. And so we feel that is, we can do a better job at aligning, if they're going into an academy, that transfer is actually occurring. And when I was in the student services seat, there were some times where I would ask that question, would you still transfer if you're not into the academy? And the answer was usually no, I'll stay at my home school if I don't get in. So that really changes the numbers, for something like the DPEA, if they're accepting 120 students as a freshman class, and let's say they do it evenly, 40 from San Marcos, 40 from Santa Barbara, 40 from their DP, that's a teacher at that high school that needs to be replaced or transferred to a different school site if DPA is taking that many teachers from, or that many students from one high school. So we have a communication hierarchy. Brian, if you can pull up the narrative, page 4. So we've identified some of our processes of getting this information out. We actually have had our leadership team, about 2 weeks ago tomorrow, that we actually met with them to discuss the systems and how we're going to hire better and faster. And so we have this next layer of stakeholders that we need to inform and communicate out the message to about our process. If there's anybody we've missed, please let us know. And so, in summary, we know that the single most important factor is our teachers. We get good teachers in front of our students will achieve. The other part about that is supporting them. But we know that we have a great institutions of higher learning who are giving us great teachers from Westmont, Antioch, and UCSB. I think our job is to give those teachers an opportunity to work in our district. They do their student teaching and their pre-professional work with us. Our principals already know a lot of them and want them to come into our schools. So it really would be advantageous to us to utilize those programs. The teacher shortage is real. We're going to be probably facing that a little bit more. And when we have homegrown teachers, it doesn't make sense to allow them to look elsewhere when we have opportunities for them. We just need to provide those opportunities and have that information prior to them looking elsewhere. And so we can actually commit them to a contract sometime in mid-March at the latest, hopefully no later hiring as far as May 1st. And that way they're solidified, they know that they're going to stay here in the community, and we'll have a great teaching force from this point on. So questions, comments?
Questions, comments? Ms. Simon?
Thank you. I have a general question. One of the other things that we've heard about is the challenge when our teachers get pink slips. And this was not really part of any part of this discussion, but does changing this timeline somehow impact those that have to go on the not higher than maybe rehire list? Like, is that going to have any impact to that group of employees?
It could, depending on those who are non-reelected. What would happen is there's a education code deadline by which we have to inform people. So if our staff and our sites actually know that they're not going to reelect somebody, or we're looking at someone's resignation or retirement or termination, then that we know earlier that there's going to be a position. Part of what our job as admin on the sites is to evaluate those new teachers, probation 1 or probation 2, and really be clear that they're a fit for our district or for our school site and with our students. So the idea is if we get that information earlier, let's say we know that one of our teachers is a non-reelecting, we know that by March 1st, then we know that we're going to need a position for that school, for that content if it's a secondary school.
And on this slide, you've identified the stakeholders. Can you give some examples of how we're reaching out to the stakeholders? It seems that there's always a group of people who miss deadlines, right? And so this might actually make it grow, at least for the first year. So I think we all got an email about that as well. So I don't know if you can give some examples of how we're amping up our communication to make sure this doesn't come to a surprise to any of these stakeholders. Well,
part of what we let our leadership team know a couple weeks ago was this process. And we actually discussed and asked their input and co-constructed what our message and our communications would be. And so the buy-in that we have from a lot of our leaderships is they're willing to take it to their directors, the principals and assistant principals. They're also willing to take it to their community members and their teachers and say, we need to be able to do this. Part of our job is to make a very clear, succinct message, and then really continue to communicate that to our community, give them the rationale, give them the big why we're doing this, and then the moving of the dates of a lot of our events that create the opportunities for students to experience or at least know about what's available at other high schools especially. That's incumbent upon us to really make that happen. So I think part of our communication process is to ensure that the message is the same from what we're talking about here now at the board and as we move to our leadership sites, but also make sure that the community is as informed and give them opportunities to have input about how they feel in the accelerated process of our timelines.
Thank you, and I'm hearing this, and I like it, and I just want to make sure that we amp up whatever we've done in the past to make sure that folks hear about this, and I don't know what that looks like, but I think it needs to be much more if this is the direction we're moving to, so that it's the outreach, right, not just the information. Yes, they need the information, but we need to connect with them and tell them we have information to give them, and so it's that piece that I'm hoping will amp up.
Ms. Parker.
I'm really thrilled that we're moving in this direction because, if other districts can do this, we could do it too. And so it's been frustrating over the years to see this happen again and again. And, I don't know how this happens. But, keeping in mind that 10 years ago, there were no transfer deadlines at all. And I mean, you remember that. I mean, you could transfer the day school started.
Right.
And people were moving around. It was really hard to pin down, and we've been going through a process. So it's great that we're headed in this direction. When we get to the BPs and ARs, I do have concerns on the staff side, because I understand that all this stuff is really going to mostly affect the site level principals, I would think.
Yes.
In terms of everything that they expected to start at the beginning of January, instead they're being asked to start a month early. And on the flip side, they are the ones that are screaming the loudest when they lose those teachers. And so I think that they would be so happy about May or June that might, mitigate any pain for now. But my biggest concern is parents and the moving of that deadline. And so one of the questions that I have that is, and let's talk about it when we get to the next ones, but it's about, should it be phased? What would the impact be if we just, in this first year, made it so that it was, 2 weeks later or earlier, I should say, than in past years, and then bring it up to the full date in the following year out. That's just a question mark, and we can talk about it when we get to the BP, but that's what's running through my head.
Mr. Hare.
Just curious, is there something that stops us from hiring starting March 1st? Other than we don't know what we need, but
That's it.
if we have some idea,
We can't offer a position and hire for it if there's no need for it. We would have teachers that we'd be paying to not teach, and we don't offer contracts to people who we don't have contracts for. So it really is knowing who we need for our secondary, what content, and then being able to offer those positions earlier. And it's really about getting information earlier and integrating all of our systems, especially our transfers and then our student requests. So as we looked at, there are systems that need to be integrated more efficiently. And so part of the process is also making that earlier.
I presume in the past, by March 1st, we probably have some idea of some teachers that we need.
Yes.
But we don't make an effort to hire until later, even though we know we might need a math teacher at one of the high schools?
We have not in the past. I know that they've had, like this year we had information. There was a process that we were actually going through. It was actually in this room where we were discussing what each school needed. This was, I think it was just our secondary schools at that time. And it was not as efficient as we had hoped to as far as declaring where there were holes or needs and where there was excess. So sometimes what happens is there's excess because of a declining enrollment. So if that's a tenured teacher, we have to put that teacher somewhere. And if there isn't a place to put them, then we need to find a place to put them. So that's part of the difficulty is knowing exactly how many we need due to our enrollment and what content area is going to be needing to be taught. And then there's the one-offs, which are more of our electives. So I think part of it really is getting information earlier so we can make better decisions earlier.
Yeah. It seems a shame to delay it a year if there's a way to speed it up.
There is one area where we'll move earlier than that window, and it's special education. I mean, I would say our mod to severe needs, we'll analyze it very soon, and we can anticipate what we need there. I'd say there's some high needs area, mod severe, school psychologists, speech language pathologists, and then probably in the secondary schools, some of the, like, maybe chemistry, physics. You know, if we know clearly we have a need, we'll make offers in January, February. But the bulk of it, we just need all that data in, you know, about enrollment, student course requests.
Well, that's my, I guess my concern was that if we know we're going to do it, and we just don't do it, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
So if we know it, and
We'll make offers.
and there's nothing stopping us from doing it, then I think we should do it.
Yes, we will. We will move early when the data tells us that we need people in those categories.
Ms. Parker?
I will note, and maybe Mr. Matsuoka, you could speak to this from other districts, but I've seen other unified districts where they will start a pool interview process well before they know exactly what their needs are. They don't make offers until they know what their needs are, but they will at least start the process. And what I've seen here is that a lot of times that hasn't even started until, you know, well past when everybody else has been making, at that point, their final hires. So, you know, it's, there's some things that we can do without knowing the numbers.
Any other questions, comments? I won't repeat everything everyone else said, so I agree with everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One comment about communication. Once we get this sorted out, especially at the principal level, you know, with all the open houses, academy, then we've got to distill this down to a one-sheet piece of paper that can be PDF, that can be distributed. It doesn't show as well with that, but there's a sequence to that grid, and where districts get in trouble is when everybody in that list isn't synchronized around the communication. And sometimes we send it out from the district office and we just sort of blast it out to everybody. Some of that has to be discussed face-to-face with our staff about why, so that when they get the questions in the offices, the guidance counselors, that they understand the background to it. So that's going to take place down to that middle level. And then the bottom level is that's the mass communication, and we will over-communicate. We'll use every means possible to get this out.
Okay, that brings us to item number 3, discussion of board policy 5116.1, inter-district open enrollment. I believe we have one speaker for this item, and then we'll move to a discussion of board policy 5117, inter-district attendance.
So you want the speaker now? Yeah. So we have a speaker card for Lisa Kerwan.
Okay.
So next one. Okay.
Okay, so we'll then present this item, which is board policy 5116.1.
And Ms. Wagenknecht will guide us through the changes that would be needed if we were to move all of these systems earlier.
Hey, Dr. Paz, board. I bring to you very minimal changes on board policy 5116.1. Page 3 of 4. We are proposing to begin the open enrollment policy, or transfer rather, on December 1st and have it end on January 20th. Changing it from basically the first day back after winter break in January to February 15th. That is the only change here. I will anticipate Ms. Parker's question about why we chose this date. We actually had quite a few iterations of what this time period should look like. We grappled with it in cabinet. The principals grappled with it as well, and then we came together and talked about it some more. Really what it comes down to is that in order to get the data and have it be good data in terms of the enrollment at the different schools in time to start hiring March 1st, my office of essentially, it's really not even me, I'm involved, but it's Esther Caesar and Anna Ryerson going through nearly 900 transfer applications. That this is the time frame that we need, so even to extend it by a couple of weeks would not give us the time to do that. To communicate it properly to families, the outcome, to communicate to the schools properly, the data, but also, and more importantly, to hold the lotteries and to notify those families, because we know those are also important. This year, we're proposing, if I can speak to the lottery, we have actually scheduled that to have all of them in one day here in the boardroom. We've reserved the board, and we even have worked with the folks from the elementary gate office to hold that lottery on the same day. They've already pushed their assessment process back and began that in the fall in anticipation of possibly making this change. So we should have, that's February 9th is when we propose having those lotteries. Any questions or comments?
Mr. Herron, then.
One comment I'll put on my charter school hat. Are you thinking this will happen this year, this December?
Yes, we would, and I spoke with Damian Barnett today to discuss how it would impact them, and after speaking with him, he was pretty confident that this would not affect him, but we'll also speak with the other two charter schools.
It will affect them. Their final date is well after January, it's like January 26th, so they would have to move we want them to have their lotteries before our cutoff date, so those students who don't get in the lottery can then apply to one of our schools. So each of the charter schools have their cutoff date well in advance of ours, so then they can hold a lottery if necessary, and still give the parents a chance to get into our schools of their, make them have an opportunity to choose the school they want to go to. And so it will affect Damien, and he needs to, I'm sure he will, look at his cutoff date, and I know it's well after January 20th.
One thing that, thank you, that would go to what we need to communicate out to families is that being involved in the lottery selection process for the charter schools doesn't prevent families from applying as well as a backup plan to Peabody, Adelante, or Santa Barbara Charter School. So thank you, because that'll be one piece of communication that we'll need to make really clear. It's the same with the academies, that we have to communicate that you indicate that you're interested in an academy or two, but that if you don't get in, you'll have a choice to return to your school, or, the opposite of what Mr. Torinas shared, which is, I still want to go to DP even though I didn't get into the engineering academy. So.
What is their cutoff date?
Miss Parker, sorry.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I was appreciating that difference, because guess what? It doesn't affect Peabody Charter. It affects the families. It affects our schools.
Correct.
They're going to get their enrollment, so
yes.
It doesn't make any difference to
Yes.
them. And so when he was saying that, I think he was thinking with his Peabody Charter,
Correct.
bifocals on, and not thinking about the fact that there are students that won't get in, many students that won't get in, and students that won't get into Adelante that may not have even thought about it. And I always think about it with Peabody in particular, because so many families come in there thinking that that is their neighborhood school and they have a right to go there, and then are blindsided. And so I do think it's important that that they have their application deadline, their enrollment deadline before ours. Just because, and with Adelante, it is so many English learner families that even with the best of intentions for outreach, it's really hard to get the message out. And so I don't want to disadvantage families accidentally. So I just want to be really careful about that. And so that's a concern.
Yeah. And the major concern is, unfortunately, there are families who go through Peabody lottery and then don't get in, but haven't made any alternative plans, and they're stuck at a school because they can't apply anyplace else, no matter what communication we do.
Yeah.
So I know currently Peabody at the lottery tells everybody, if you don't get in, you better apply now to the school you may want to go to, because you still have time to do that. But if their cutoff is January 29th, that's 9 days after ours, if they haven't made an alternative plan, then they're out in the cold, and that's when we hear about it. So.
But also, I think it's important to note, especially with the elementary schools, that we can probably look at historical data for them in terms of hiring. And we're going to need, if you kind of know what your enrollment trends are, this is the amount of space that there is at Peabody. This X number of overflow students have been coming, and we'll have to hire X number of teachers. And so in some ways, I feel like, especially at the elementary level, it's actually a little bit easier because you don't have the, single subject issue. And so it's more about estimating total numbers, and you're going to interview elementary teachers, and then maybe you'll assign them to Roosevelt based on ultimate numbers, or maybe you'll assign them to, Washington. But it's just a little bit easier at elementary and a little bit more flexible. And so I don't know. I mean, maybe might be helpful to phase it for elementary and not for secondary. Since I think that the numbers need to be more targeted for secondary. But, that's a question mark. And I'm curious to hear what other board members have to say, because, we sit up here and we know everything that's going on, and yet so many times we've gotten feedback that you made a change, especially to this policy, and then somebody didn't hear about it. And so it makes me nervous.
It makes me nervous too, because I think one of the things that we're really, all of us, I think, are alluding to is trying to get the information out there as soon as possible for parents. I live in the Peabody area. My child was eligible to go to school, and I didn't know, didn't sit here, then I would assume, like, oh, well, it's not a problem. I have no idea. But I'm in the know. What about all the other parents who don't? And so I think that's an important piece not to forget in terms of all this is we're never going to get everyone, but I think what we're trying to say is how can we do the best job possible so we touch as many families as we possibly can. And I think that's a critical piece too right now. I'm trying to align all these things with charter schools, and then also looking at it in terms of just the ability of parents to make choices even beyond applying to a charter school. What are their choices? Can they go to another school, or is there an alternative? So I think you're right, Ms. Parker. I think that we really need to be really paying attention to it. Maybe a phase in at the elementary may be a little more appropriate, but I don't know. I think it's kind of going back to the discussion we had before with Cleveland, like, well, we don't know what we don't know until it happens. So I'm with you, Ms. Idelson.
I think the stress comes with the programs of choice, being the charter schools or the GATE program or wherever, and that comes with the lottery.
Yeah.
And that's when we hear about it, because I think parents feel that stress of, this is where I want my child to go. How do I go about it? And then the application process becomes very dicey. So, in my opinion, lead time is very important. Communication is absolutely imperative, and then I think change is fine. But coordinating with the other schools is going to be critical because of what's been said.
I'm wondering on the charter school question, and thanks for that. So many things are new. That if we work with Peabody, Adelante, and Santa Barbara Charter, that we work with them on their application form, that they list an alternative choice inside of our district, so they don't have to do a separate process.
Yeah.
Because then, it's as they are trying to get to their choice, they're asked the question, okay, just in case, what would you choose back in us? And it just eliminates a two-application system where, because then the parent might go off and not send us their application.
I guess my question is, when somebody applies to Peabody, is that an application we even see?
Yeah, that would be a system change there.
Yeah.
No.
We don't even see it, so we wouldn't know that they put an alternate school on there.
Yeah.
But the proposal there is, that's something we could work with them on.
Yeah.
That, because we live the disappointment of people who don't get into Peabody, especially those who buy houses in the area and then suddenly find out that they cannot go to school there. And so I think that's something we definitely
That's us real
should
estate.
work on.
That's us real estate people advertising Peabody School District or whatever school district. You see it in the paper every week.
So let's talk to the realtors.
Well, I actually did about 14 months ago, went to their monthly breakfast and shared with them our open enrollment policy and talked about Washington and Peabody and Roosevelt and so on, so.
And I have to say that I've been told that was the best meeting they've ever had with that one-on-one with you.
Best
Good
ever. She's blushing now.
Go Fran, go.
You should get a commission at every house now.
Dr. Paz, if I may.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I had some suggested wording too, because I think another piece that you're going to have an issue with this year, I don't think that this year you're going to get the academies to buy in to moving their dates for enrollment forward, that they won't have capacity to do that. And I'll be, open that we've had these conversations with some of them in the past, and they have very strongly resisted because they feel like they need the end of the first semester information for 8th graders, which doesn't come out until after January 20th, and then they start their whole process. And so I think it's going to take a little time. But what I realized is, although it's been current practice to insist, and we've had some appeals come through where, a student got in to an academy but actually hadn't realized that they needed to do an inter-district transfer or an intra-district transfer, and they thought that that academy application was enough. And so we've really been trying to hold to making sure that they have that in there, but we don't have any language around it, and so I have suggested language to add to the AR on making sure, at least for this coming year, that secondary students and parents know that they need to put in their transfer request forms before the stated deadline. And then I also have some suggested language around the elementary GATE program that doesn't say that it's not done at the same time as everybody else, but it gives that program a little bit more flexibility, because my biggest concern there is that we've been working so hard to get more English learner students to transfer into Washington. And that if we have accelerated a deadline and then we're communicating about it, but we're not necessarily communicating well to our English learner families, that they may accidentally miss this process or understand that they could have transferred. And so I would like to suggest some AR language just to give the GATE program elementary GATE, a little bit more flexibility. And so those are going to be some AR suggestions, but then the question mark is the date. And I don't know how to poll parents and say, hey, can you do this? Are you all going to get the message? That's hard.
Yes. No other questions, comments? We'll move on to.
I do actually have
yes.
one last
Go ahead.
question, comment, and that is reality. Parents are thinking right now about the transfer. So I know that they're thinking about it right now. So if we can just get the word out in some way.
Yes. We can go to item number 4, discussion board policy 5117, inter-district attendance.
Public comment?
Yes.
Okay. We have Lisa Kerwan? Okay. 3 minutes, and I'll let you know 30 seconds before the end.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Lisa Kerwin, and I'm a teacher at Open Alternative School. I've been there and a teacher in the Santa Barbara School District for the past 19 years. And we just wanted to bring to your attention that the new proposed amended dates for the inter-district transfers may create challenges for OAS school community in relation to enrollment and continuing giving families outside of the school district the opportunity to become part of our school community. Right now, the inter-district enrollment is January 4th through February 16th, and it's a 6-week time period, as you all know, for families outside of the school district. And a lot of as it stands, many of the preschool programs do not do their outreach school panels until February and March, so we are already slightly out of sync with that form of community outreach. The new proposed amended dates are December 1st and January 20th, and this bumps back the time period an entire month, pushing it even further away from those preschool outreach panels in February and March. It is also during winter break, where the families are, where the district office is closed, I believe, for 2 weeks. So that's 2 whole weeks that gets bumped out of that time period where people can turn in their application process and do the procedures they need to do. So we just had questions on what the district would do, ways the district would make sure the larger community is aware that this is happening, and also how to kind of offset that huge, that's a lot of time, 2-week period, where is somebody going to be available to take and process those applications for the inter-district transfers. So we just really ask that you consider all of this when you're making your decision, and look forward to working with you to create long-term solutions. So thank you. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Parker.
I really appreciate her point, because another thing that happens, of course, is that when you're leaving a school, you visit your home school. And so by doing it this way, we're cutting out 2 weeks of time that principals, I'm not so concerned about them getting the forms in here, because I know that'll happen, but it's the time to visit their home school. And so I think that that's just something that we need to be thinking about too, in terms of impact on school schedules with tours and visits. And maybe a solution to that in the long run is to open it even earlier, so it opens in mid-November instead of the beginning of December, but that is not a 17-18 solution.
They're required to visit the homeschool for a signature, right? Correct. Okay, so that would be a concern.
But say that again, which situation?
To
is that one?
leave the school that your attendance area is requires the principal's signature on the form.
For the intra.
Correct.
District.
Yeah. So that isn't an inter effect, but it's an intra effect, and she's bringing it to mind for the interest for me again.
Interesting.
Not so simple.
Not so simple.
No. Any other questions, comments on this item?
One other thing that I had mentioned was the idea of possibly trying to take away an end date, or clarifying that the end date, in this case, it's tied to the end of the first semester in the secondary district. And maybe it's better to do it that way than putting in January 20th, just to, because that would change every year, and then we have to do the whole weekend thing. And
So let me tell you what we're looking for as staff. This is a first reading, but we really need to hear your opinion, if not tentative decisions on this. We would bring these policies back to you for approval or borderline ratification at the November 17th board meeting. But we hear your request to get the communication out. Trust me, we've already talked about how many people we've got to get this out to. But if we don't have sort of those sense from you about decisions, and we have to wait on communicating this, then we can't get documents out until, it would almost be after Thanksgiving. And if we're opening the window December 1st, we would put all this into production and get everything ready. November 17th is, that's even a little late to start rolling this out, because we've got to hit, monthly newsletters. We got to get it on school websites. So, you'll hear me in the future. We really shouldn't be putting things on conference and then approving it. But we do need some sense from the board about these dates. And, if you're wanting a little longer window, here's my response to that. We can work with that. It just makes our data fuzzier the longer we push this out. And we can work with fuzzy a bit. It's just, when you finally get down to, okay, how many math teachers do you need at Dos Pueblos High School? That's when it has to be precise. So,
Mr. I have no problem with it at all, other than I would hope that as applications come in on January 21st, the attitude is, sorry, you're late one day. That somebody listens to the reason they're late one day or 1 week, and at least have some flexibility the first year in the mindset of the staff, that there are going to be individuals who have a problem that, I didn't hear about it. I didn't know I couldn't get into where I wanted to go. I didn't know I had to apply. But sometimes we are so stuck on a date that we have no flexibility. So I would hope the first year the staff would listen to excuses and maybe
And
Have to late
I'll
application.
speak to that. So those will come in, and we have a late stamp. I would actually like to ultimately look at the, change at least to the, giving us some flexibility to say that if we don't meet a deadline, those will be held and then looked at a later date, which would be after we did our hiring. And, can we place folks? But yes, I mean, we listen to people, but we also have to be fair to those who did get it in,
Oh, yeah.
especially when we're looking at lotteries and those sorts of things. But we look at applications later on and where there's space, place students. Yeah.
Ms. Berger.
Mr. Herngino, is Adelante also January 29th this year?
I have, I looked at their bylaws, but I didn't have their policies and procedures, so it's not on their website
It's
that I
not
can
on there
find.
yet?
And
Okay.
so I will look into that.
I think that I don't like fuzzy when it comes to enrollment deadlines, because that can just get pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. I would rather it say that we move it forward, that it matches with the charters this year, which is January 29th. Is that a Friday? Hold on, I'm just pulling that up. That at least I can look up.
January 29th is a Sunday.
It's a Sunday, that's odd. I would suggest that we move our deadline to January 31st then. And that's probably a case for Peabody where they've put the date in their policy instead of something else that makes sense. And then also say that January 31st for 2017, and then the end of the first semester, secondary semester in January of 2018, so that everybody is clear that this is moving forward the next year. And that would be my suggestion in trying to get an actual deadline, move forward, but hopefully give us a little bit of wiggle room so people understand that we're phasing it. And then I'll read you so I have a couple of suggestions for the AR. One is that there's a bullet that says secondary students who are applying to specialized academies must have their intra-district transfer request forms in by the stated deadline, but may reject a transfer acceptance and return to their home school if they're not accepted into the academy of their choice. And then number 8, which you might want to tweak a little bit, is that all 2nd and 5th grade students who became Gate Identified are automatically eligible to transfer to the District Gate program, just because it's all 2nd graders. In particular, for the school year immediately following their initial identification, these students will be notified of the separate elementary gate transfer and lottery process into the magnet program when they receive their gate identification results. And that way, if everything gets bumped forward and they held the gate lottery on the same day, great, but if there's delays or if the gate elementary feels like English learner families in particular don't know, that gives them a little bit of flexibility. So those are my 2 suggestions for the AR.
Would you like to email those too?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you say I just had a question.
Sure, quick.
In the gate one, that they could return to they can remain at their attendance area of school?
This is all that they're just automatically, they don't even have to put in a transfer request.
Okay.
They are all eligible, because I think because it's 2nd grade, every 2nd grade student is eligible. It just makes sense that they're all eligible if they are identified. And then, they can either participate in the lottery or not participate by choice, but they haven't had that closed off to them. And I feel like especially for families that have challenges or disadvantages because of language, that we have removed a barrier for them in that way.
Makes sense. Mr. Herron.
Yes, I don't think that changing the date to the 30th or 31st solves the problem, because the deadline at, let's say, Peabody is the 29th. The lottery is not for 2 weeks later. That's where the problem comes, is when they don't get accepted by the lottery, then they have no place to go if they haven't applied.
Yeah.
But Mr. Matsuoka solved that possibly by, on their application, making it very clear by the cutoff date, we would advise you to, if you want a different school than Peabody, make it known, but then somehow we have to get that piece of information.
If it could just be something that's stapled, that our sheet that says this is the deadline, and that they, that if every charter school has that for their enrollment packets, then they could just tear off the sheet and turn it into the district.
I would hope we can work with each charter leadership and their boards about the language of their applications, so that what's nice is they're district-sponsored charters. It's very unlike the other charter relationships, and just say embedded in their application process is their choice of school to us, and it becomes their open enrollment transfer application. Let's try to make it down to like one-stop process. And, if they still want to have it separate, we can work with that. It's going to help their relationship with the people who don't get in. It's just going to help us all be on the same page. So, let's see if we can work with our charter providers to synchronize our document.
Any other questions, comments? If not, board, we are at our end of our agenda. And any coming events? Mr. Herron?
I have 3. November 2nd is the Partners Education Breakfast, which is the power of partnerships this year. We talked about partnerships earlier today. November 3rd is a Talking in Class session at Dos Pueblos. And I don't know exact time, but it's something like probably 7:30 or thereabouts. And if you haven't been to one of those sessions, they're well worth going to and hearing what's going on the campus. And then on November 6th is the Day of the Dead, Adelante's program at the De La Guerra Plaza courtyard from 10 till 4. And if you haven't been to one of their functions, I would think you should go. They're really fun.
Future agenda items? If not.
It's our last meeting. Let's load it up.
If not, we can adjourn for our next meeting, which is Thursday, November 17th. We open the board meeting at 4:45. We have a study session at 4:50. And then our regular board meeting's scheduled at 6:45.
Is there a reception at that meeting?
Yes, the plan is between the study session and I predict open session will not start at 6:45 sharp because we want to celebrate all of you. Well, most of you. And we're going to invite community members and, we'll start open session when we're done, hopefully by 7.
So what time do you think the reception will be?
Well, the study session will end at 6:30.
Okay.
That's for sure. And then I think the community reception is probably going to go for 30 minutes.
Okay. And we will play Happy Trails to. And that will be the last board meeting for at least 3 of us. Thank you all.
Thanks.